Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Editorial. Ooh, it's the show we
Ooh.
do when we either don't have a more pressing episode to release this week, or when we have some sort of topic related to theater on our minds that we'd like to discuss, which is
Exactly.
both of those being the case this week.
Mm-hmm.
Brought to you by Cup
Yes.
of Hemlock Theatre. I will be your host for this episode, Ryan Borochovitz, co-artistic producer here at Cup of Hemlock, and I'm joined today by my other co-artistic producer, Mackenzie Horner. Hello, Mac. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you?
I cannot complain. Happy to be here. Happy to talk
Yes.
about whatever this is going to be.
Oh, it's going to be a fun one, Ryan. Almost as fun as your hat.
Yes, why am I wearing a hat? Well, much like
It's not your ensemble choice like a Jill would make?
I guess it kind of is. Much like our good friend Hamlet, you could say I am wearing a silly hat. You know, actually, Hamlet takes off his hat, actually, to show that there is a line that Ophelia says to Polonius about how he's not wearing his hat. Oh my God, what an antic disposition he has. Whereas I feel like nowadays, if you wear a silly hat, that shows what an antic disposition you have. But truth be told, for those who are watching on screen, yes, you see I'm wearing a silly hat. For those listening as a podcast, you have no idea what we're talking about. I have a silly, big, floppy brimmed hat on because where I'm sitting, where I usually do these recordings, at this time in the afternoon, the sun is right in my eyes. You can see if you're watching on screen. So I put on this floppy hat to cover my eyes. And as the sun sets, as we continue this recording, I will probably take it off. So,
or Ryan, maybe this is a whole new fashion choice where maybe you're just giving up the plaid look to go for the Tilly hat look. And every episode will be a different Tilly hat.
Yes, I don't have that many, so it might
people
just have
send some Ryan, so just send Ryan some Tilly hats.
Yeah, all of our fans, so That's many of them send me weird hats.
Ryan sends weird hats every episode. I love that.
Yeah. So, Mac, what's in your cup today before we get into the topic?
Well, I am drinking some Earl Grey tea in the cup.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yes. How about you, sir?
I too have tea in the cup, but because we really want to get sponsored by the Taylor's Yorkshire Tea Company that I got for free at Stratford.
That we do.
I am drinking Taylor's Yorkshire Tea. # not yet sponsored.
Not yet sponsored, but we're tagging you in this.
Are we? We didn't in the previous episode, I don't think.
We should go back and tag them in that episode and also in this episode.
Fun stuff.
We absolutely should.
Okay, so the topic at hand for this Cup editorial, which again is the show where we just talk about whatever's currently on our mind in the theater world. It doesn't have to be prompted by a particular show that we saw or an artist's work, is loosely what we're calling a discussion about Shakespeare on film. And that's kind of going to go in a few different directions that we'll discuss in a minute. But Mac, you were the one who proposed this episode, so I want to lob it to you. Like, what got you thinking about Shakespeare on film right now in January 2026?
So this really didn't start as just a Shakespeare on film. This more just came as in honor of Hamnet being in theaters now, and now is an Oscar-nominated film. And so sad Paul Mescal did not get nominated, but so glad Jessie Buckley did. Oscar-winning director. You have two great actors in the lead, and it's about Shakespeare, which is tangentially Cup adjacent enough that we figured we could talk about that particular piece. But then my original idea for this, before Ryan had a brilliant branch out idea, was what other Shakespeare adaptations should be mounted now in 2026
on film specifically.
On film. The Shakespeare canon is vast. It's this ever evolving canon of work where, yes, the plays all stay the same, but how we interpret and how we look at the material, some shows grow in popularity, some shows shrink in popularity. And so it's the idea of which ones do we think warrant a cinematic adaptation now in this day and age. And so that's where my original idea was. Then Ryan had a better idea.
I don't know that better, different idea.
I'd say better. It developed from just doing a simple top 5 list into an actual deeper discussion about Shakespeare on film in general, and also focusing on the whole topic of Hamlet as a Shakespeare play on film. Because to my surprise, as Ryan has found, there's been quite a few adaptations of this particular play.
Yeah, more than a few, one might say.
Yeah, more than a few. So there's lots there to discuss. So yeah, we took kernel of an idea and we expounded it in true editorial fashion. So basically, started off as a Hamnet and Shakespeare on film discussion, and kind of just blossomed from there.
Let me ask you, Max, something. Because when you proposed this, I had just assumed that you had recently seen Hamnet.
Yes.
At time of recording, have you seen Hamnet?
No. So what happened there is I was going to go see it this weekend.
Yeah.
And then last weekend for my birthday, my sister surprised me that on Family Day weekend, her and I are going out for dinner and a movie to see Hamnet. Because that's a book she read in her book club. I still have yet to actually read the book, but my sister said it was a good book. From there, I was like, okay, all right, it's fine. I will happily wait, and we'll do like a winterlicious night out. We'll go do a nice dinner. We'll go see the movie. It'll be great. It could be a grand old time. So that is what we're doing. But
So
that delayed me seeing Hamnet.
which is funny because like when you propose this, I'm like, damn, I should go see Hamnet. One, I really already wanted to see Hamnet. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. So I'm like, you know what? Just this week before we record this episode, I will make a point of seeing it. And then after I did so, you told me that, oh yeah, I haven't seen it and won't by the time we record this. So like, well, I rushed to see it for nothing. I'm glad I saw it because it's really good. And
I'm glad you did see it.
That will limit how much this discussion can be about it because I have so many thoughts, but I don't think I should spoil
Well,
it.
maybe you and I will do a follow-up editorial on just a review, like a proper review of Hamnet as a discussion.
We'll think about that. But in general, to kind of continue sort of the impetus for this episode, because you, I think, with your original thought was just like, hey, top 5 Buzzfeed-esque list of what.
Yeah, just like a fun, like what's good. Editorials don't always have to be, like you and I have always said, editorials can either be like a 30-40 minute quick jump on, discuss an interesting topic, or it can be a deeper conversation that hopefully this one does not run our full 2-hour gambit like we have in the past. We will see how far we go on this.
Yeah, like it might. It's fine. I think I have a very hard time just keeping things fluffy and frivolous. Whereas you proposed what sounded like a fun, frivolous idea, and I'm like, hey, okay, listen.
Exactly. It was something fun, light, easy for you and I to jump on and do, to have a topic about a fun material. And then if that results in a bigger conversation, great. But it was one of those fun kind of jump off fun videos.
I guess what I want to say here, though, is just, and this is still part of the whole topic at hand for what this episode is when you kind of proposed that, hey, what are some Shakespeare plays you'd like to see new film adaptations of? My initial thought, and this is a very me thought, is that, oh no, I feel like this episode that should have just been a fluffy, frivolous BuzzFeed kind of thing will just become another you and me Doubt type episode, like the episode we just did on Ren Theater's production of Doubt, because my initial thought is, why do we need more Shakespeare film adaptations? Because, and this is actually kind of a particular thing, because every single Shakespeare play has been adapted to film many, many times, more than you realize, more than anybody realizes. We'll talk about Hamlet in particular, but there are just so many freaking movies based on this, because it's the most famous literature in the world ever produced. So, of course, when people are making movies, especially in the early days of cinema, it was a very exciting thing to, let's adapt this.
Well, it's copyright free.
Public domain, you don't have to pay for it.
Jump on.
You can do weird creative things with it. But with your initial pitch of, hey, what are some Shakespeare movies you'd like to see movies of? Like, we don't need to make new ones. We could just watch movies of all of these. I kind of had to think for a moment of like, well, what am I getting at with that retort? And it kind of comes down to the fact that movies and theater are very different art forms. And this is the kind of thing that we talked about Doubt, that I kind of keep coming back to. I talked about it about SNL in a way. And I think I have another idea for a more direct confrontation of this topic for a future editorial that we may or may not make. But why I don't mind just seeing Shakespeare revived in theater over and over again versus in film, I'm like, well, the film exists. You can always see it. You can always go back and watch every version of these. Theater, I get that if you want to see these Shakespeare play live, you need to do it again live. In order to be theater, it must be recreated in the moment, co-presence with its audience in that way. But there's a lot of talk about, I guess, just the definitive Hamlet, for example, or can there ever be a definitive version? And I think the cover... What was that laugh?
Well, this is a question: can there be a definitive Hamlet? And I'm just like, no, because the joy of Shakespeare is the way we interpret it evolves depending on our time period, our sensibilities of the time, and so Shakespeare is so great because the goalposts move on what makes a definitive Hamlet. Because there is no definitive Hamlet, because what Laurence Olivier did in his time, the way he interpreted Hamlet, is very different from how Mel Gibson did it, and then how Kenneth Branagh did it just a few years later. and it's all about the way you enter into the piece, and just even the acting styles change, and people's preference on the acting style affects how they rank a Hamlet. And I can't think of many other source materials that give us such a joy in interpreting that. Like Sherlock Holmes has been adapted many times. But Sherlock Holmes is Sherlock Holmes. He has the stocking cap. He is kind of what's the word I'm looking for?
Magnifying glass.
No, not magnifying glass, but
No.
he usually played as like Asperger's, like high functioning autistic.
Yeah,
Watson
I think that was kind of something that
Watson is kind of the more jovial, personable member of that duo. There's not many new ways you can reinterpret Sherlock Holmes. Like, he is a character who is set in a way in a box. It's the same thing with Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. You can do a new film adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird, but who's ever going to take on that role is going to be not too far off from a Gregory Peck interpretation.
Let me challenge that, if you don't mind, just for a moment. And like, for the most part, I do agree with you about these things, but you just said a moment ago that like acting styles change, filmmaking styles change. So a movie from, when did To Kill a Mockingbird come out? Like 1950 something? We don't need to look it up. We know it's an old movie, black and white, Gregory Peck.
1950, 1960, yeah. Same year as Lawrence of Arabia.
I think if Jeff Daniels starred in a film adaptation of, say, Aaron Sorkin's play adaptation,
which is a great adaptation. I did see it when it was here in Toronto.
Is he just doing a Gregory Peck impression? I know you didn't see Jeff Daniels in Toronto, but
I didn't see Jeff Daniels do it. But I would say they're different because the writing and the way Aaron Sorkin interpreted it is very different than how Gregory Peck did it. Just the adaptation of the work, like, is so vastly different. But like, Hamlet is Hamlet. Kenneth Branagh is going to say the same to be or not to be speech as Gibson, as Olivier. The text will remain the same, but the way you interpret that text is going to be very different, and that's why the goalposts move. The only thing that's going to stay the same for Gregory Peck's and Jeff Daniels for Atticus Finch is the courtroom speech, the temerity. That was the only thing. Like, if you read both the film screenplay and the Aaron Sorkin script, the only thing, and even then, I'm thinking back correctly, getting into it, it gets into it in a slightly different way. It's not exactly a beat for beat way of getting into it, but Act 3, Scene 1, I think, is To Be or Not to Be, right? If I'm remembering my Shakespeare correctly. Act 3, Scene 1 always starts with Polonius and Claudius entering the scene. They see Hamlet coming. They go behind the curtain or behind a wall or behind, or in Kenneth Branagh's case, a false mirror picture thing. And ultimately, then they spy on Hamlet as he has the speech. Like, that scene will always kind of, it's going to be what it is, but the way the actor interprets that monologue is unique, and therefore you can't really say that is a definitive Hamlet, because the next person's going to do that monologue in a very different way. Again, I don't know if I'm making any sense, or if I'm
you are. I'm just remembering now that you say that. Did you ever see the Benedict Cumberbatch, like, National Theatre? They recorded it for National Theatre. Benedict Cumberbatch Hamlet.
Yes.
I'm quite certain, granted it's been several, maybe even like 10 years since I saw it, but they moved up To Be or Not to Be in a completely different moment in the play.
Well, that's interesting.
And so even just you saying that, like, oh, it'll always be Polonius and Claudius go high, like, I don't think it was in that case. And so
I mean, that's a unique outlier. Most times, if you were to go through however many film adaptations of Hamlet there are, alone, not even counting the stage adaptation.
Yeah, that was a stage version that they just did a pro shot of for National Theatre Live.
But even just doing that, where you look at them and go, okay, 9 times out of 10, To Be or Not to Be is going to fall right here at this very moment at exactly, 40 minutes in, we get To Be or Not to Be showing up on our screen. Roughly, once again. I don't know how we got here, but it's that thing of the joy of Shakespeare, and why I thought this topic was interesting, of new film adaptations of Shakespeare, is that the canon is so rich and open to continual reinterpretations, that just because Olivier did it really well in the 50s doesn't mean that
40s, I think, actually.
40s,
48. Yeah. Okay.
40. Sorry, Olivier did it 48. But like, just because he did it really well then doesn't mean I think we should have ever stopped. I mean, Hamlet's one, maybe we should maybe let that play lie. But there are other plays in the canon that I would love to see new interpretations of. But the point is, I'm glad I got to see the Mel Gibson versus the Kenneth Branagh, because I went back today and I rewatched several different To Be or Not to Be's on YouTube. And they're all different. They all have something, they're shot differently, they have different vibes to them. Like the Olivier one with the whole skull cross fade in and out, and the internal mind is so different from Mel Gibson up on the parapet with his sword, like gouging things around, to, Kenneth Branagh with a two-way mirror. Very different readings of that one scene. And Ethan Hawke in his modern day adaptation is very different.
What I'm hearing from a lot of this, which I think is interesting, and this is why I tie it back to our discussion of doubt, is the 18th century critic is rearing his head again. Because
I'm always happy to have new theater produced. I'm always happy. Like Chalk Free just did their version of Company. It's a very different interpretation of Company compared to the Neil Patrick Harris concert version of Company, which is very different from the West End revival that I saw with Patti LuPone. Like each one was very different, and I enjoyed elements of each of them. And it's one of those things of, why not? Like just produce it and see what you come up with. I mean, sometimes it's going to work really well. Sometimes it's going to be a total misfire, and it's going to be, why did you ever try? Or it's like, that was a total misfire, let's not do that one again. But I'm always of the opinion of, if you feel you have something to say and this is the way you're going to do it, is by producing a piece, whether it's Doubt or 12 Angry Men or something that there's a definitive or people deem a definitive version. I'm like, give it a try. You never know. I mean, why not? Well, what's it going to hurt? I mean, the rights are free for Shakespeare, so go for it. I mean, we wouldn't have the Stratford Shakespeare Festival here in Canada if we stopped at season 10 after they've done all the Shakespeare canon. So why not? I go, why not?
Well, fun. Yeah. So this is what I'm getting at about like film and theater being different. Because yes, with theater, yes, if you want to see Troilus and Cressida,
Ryan's favorite.
I don't know. I'm going to see it this coming week. I might have already seen it by the time this episode comes out, but I've never seen it staged before. I've read it once. Didn't do much for me on the page, but based on the early reviews that have actually been coming out of this current Shakespeare batch production, apparently this is a play that something happens when you lift it off the page, that something is lost there that you find in performance, or at least in this interpretation. But I guess film is interestingly different than theater because it exists. It is that plastic artifact that, yes, acting styles change, production styles change, but for the most part, unless you're going to do something crazy with it, just doing another Hamlet, for example, is just, you're doing a Hamlet. I don't find the fact that Branagh stands in front of a mirror versus Gibson on a mountain, or that alone doesn't excite me. Just that forensic 18th century critic of it all. Now, I will say, and I said this point in Doubt, that I think the reason why that style of criticism works so well with Shakespeare is exactly what you're saying, that the text of Shakespeare with like the minimal stage directions and the so much nuance and texture in the lines allows actors to really make it their own. And if you care that much about forensically thinking about how this actor does it different than that actor, then sure, it's a very good canvas for that. That's why 18th century theater, and by extension the birth of modern theater criticism that came out of that, was working with very fertile ground with Shakespeare. I feel like something like a play like Doubt, for example, and this is the point I made in that episode, is that there's just really not that much texture and difference you can do with it because the text is very fixed. So when we have what I would personally call a definitive version of that play that just happens to be a movie that you could watch whenever you want, I struggle to see the why not do the play again. Shakespeare is different, and we can agree that Shakespeare is different. And because, as you pointed out, it's also public domain, people do have the freedom to get weird with it in a way that John Patrick Shanley does not really allow you to do with Doubt.
Or Tennessee Williams if you're doing another version of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, or Streetcar.
Suffice to say, what my mind kind of went to with this is, well, we've had, according to Wikipedia, Hamlet has been adapted to screen over 50 times since the year 1900, since the birth of cinema. So I'm like, okay, that's a lot of Hamlets. And yet...
And we're going to rank all 50 of them now, Ryan.
That's exactly what we're here for now. But in the spirit of the new movie Hamnet being somewhat of inspired this episode, and me seeing it and having a truly like cathartic, moving experience watching this, that granted is not just another movie of Hamlet. There is
no, like once again, Hamnet, the way I've been pitched to, I don't know if maybe it's wrong, but the way it was pitched to me and what made me interested is that it is a story exploring how Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. And if you know your history of Hamnet and Hamlet, basically Hamlet came after the death of Shakespeare's son, Hamnet, and was a grief. Basically, people have attributed to being a grief writing process. Now, whether or not the film does that, I don't know.
What I will say, and this is really non-spoiler about it for your benefit.
Because Ryan knows I'm trying to avoid spoilers. I want to be as genuinely surprised as possible.
It is both exactly that and 1,000% not that.
Okay. I'm excited.
On one hand, pitch-wise, like, yes, it is exactly about how the death of young Hamnet Shakespeare did indeed inspire, so theoretically, for the purposes of this story, the writing of the play we all know. But it is definitely not Shakespeare in Love, and it's definitely not Bohemian Rhapsody. And what I mean,
that's exciting.
Like, and what I mean by that, and it's just Bohemian Rhapsody. I fucking hate that movie, but
it's very overrated. Honestly,
I don't know.
I think away from the. I mean, I'm excited for the new Beatles movies that are coming. That are like the 4 individual biopics that then accumulate into one film in the end, and they just saw the character posters, and all of them look great. And I think Paul Mescal is playing one of them.
Is he? Okay.
I think so.
He's having a good year.
Well, he's just started shooting those films now. They won't come out until like 2028, I think is when their first ones. Anyway, point being is
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Bohemian Rhapsody is just
well,
it's just very overdone.
That might feel like an out of left field comparison. Shakespeare in Love, that makes sense. That is what things in Shakespeare's life inspired him to write Romeo and Juliet, maybe. But what Bohemian Rhapsody does that I just find so tedious is that it's just a sequence of scenes for how did they get the idea to write this song? Oh, I guess that's how. And they're just like the boringest possible answers that may or may not be true. I don't know. I don't care enough to look it up. But it's just Brian May being like, I would like to write a song that the audience can join us in. We did it.
I mean, there's a way more interesting story, but I from what I heard, what happened there was that Freddie Mercury's estate got involved and kind of said, "You got to." It's something out with Michael Jackson's.
I believe it's actually the opposite. It was actually the surviving members of Queen had way too much influence over it, which is why so much of the movie is like on one hand, it's like a Freddie Mercury hagiography of, this amazing left us the world too soon wonderkin of what he created. But then the whole second half is about how his solo career was a disaster and that how he was nothing without the rest of them. Like that feels like the influence of their. But anyway, I bring it up to be like, that is just such a tedious thing that I feel like based on the pitch for what you describe, you think Hamnet is. It could have very much been that. It is.
Which would be an interesting story, just the process of grief and writing. I think that could have been a very interesting. I mean, I think that'd be a better one-man show of somebody playing Shakespeare writing Hamlet while he processes grief. I think that could be a fascinating one-man show. Maybe Ryan will write it. Who knows?
Why would I write that? I think that's a bad idea. I just said that.
I challenge you to make it a good idea, Ryan.
I don't want to.
Add it to our list of things you're going to write one day.
I don't think so. but yeah, this isn't the Shakespeare gets an idea or you know what it's also not. It's not Solo, a Star Wars story. Which is how did Han Solo meet Chewie? How did he get his gun? How did he get the idea to shoot first? And just like the whole movie is a string of, I guess that's how he got the gun. Somebody gave it to him. Ooh, aren't you excited that you saw his gun? But
a lot of fan service,
yeah. So this isn't the fan servicey Hamlet movie that
there's more to it.
And it really hits, and I think it hits so well is because it's actively not being that, which I would love to get into in more details, but I won't spoil it.
We will. Once again, we're doing a follow-up.
I don't know if we're doing that. But while we're on the topic of do we need more Shakespeare movies and just how many Hamlets there have been, the thing that my mind went to with this is that what I'm kind of more interested in is weird Hamlet, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
There's a movie I didn't see this past year, but that just seemed like such an interesting premise called Grand Theft Hamlet. Did you
What the
hear about
hell is
this?
that?
It was made during the pandemic. Of they apparently staged a whole production of Hamlet in the game Grand Theft Auto.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did not
right.
hear about this at all, but go
I think
for
it's like
it.
a movie exclusive. If you have the
Yeah.
streaming service movie, you could
Yeah.
watch it. But yeah, I
Okay.
don't have movie, so I didn't see this movie. But I'm like that
I
just
do not
sounds like
have
a
movie
cool
either.
thing to do with Hamlet because we have, according to Wikipedia, over 50 film versions of it exist, and we have the classics. We have Olivier in 1948. We have the Richard Burton one, directed by John Gielgud in 1964. The Mel Gibson one, directed by Franco Zeffirelli in
Mhm.
1990. And of course, we have the Kenneth Branagh starring and directed
Yes.
in
4 hour epic.
1996. Yes, the
You
truly
thought Hamlet
most
couldn't get
authentic.
longer, but Kenneth Branagh proved you wrong.
And to me, even though an 18th century critic like yourself loves to point out all the little differences, to me, those are all the same movie in my head. I get that
Well,
they're
they're the same
not.
story. They're the same
Yeah.
plot.
Like
Hamlet's
I
dad dies, Claudius does it,
but
goes
it's
to
not even just
Hamlet's
the
dad
plot.
shows up.
It's just it's the text. It is these are
Yeah.
all just like I could
Yes.
watch any one of those if I just feel like, oh, I want to revisit Hamlet, but I
Yeah.
don't feel like reading it. Like, sure,
Yeah.
I can watch any one of those movies, and
Yes.
maybe you have a favorite among them. If I had to
A
name a
favorite
favorite,
among them? I
yeah,
mean, I don't really have a favorite because each one of them is so different. I will say the first Hamlet that I saw happened when I was going to Stratford Shakespeare School.
mhm.
And this was the season of, I think Ben Carlson played Hamlet that year. Anyway, point being is Mac had never really done much Shakespeare. My dad was like, you should watch the movies to get yourself acquainted with what you're going to see. And so he went to the local video store and picked up, because he looked through the list of what Shakespeare plays you'd be seeing and studying at Stratford Shakespeare, and Hamlet was going to be one of them. And so my dad, because he likes the good old Mel Gibson movies like Braveheart, he's like, the Mel Gibson Hamlet. I could probably sit and watch this with Mac. And he and I did. And so that was my first Hamlet. Not saying it's my favorite, but that is the one that was first. Just like how my first Mackers film adaptation that I saw came from me prepping for my audition for Tucker's Free Theater back in the day, and that was unfortunately the Roman Polanski film adaptation, which he's a controversial figure
But
altogether.
it's a great movie. It
But
is
it's
a
a good movie.
fantastic movie. Yeah,
It's a great
yes.
movie,
Not to excuse any of his actions,
yes,
but
but it is
yeah,
a good movie. And so
yeah.
anyway, but once again, is the first one is the one I think of
Mhm.
in my head. While it's not my favorite, because I don't have a favorite, honestly. Like, it just depends on my mood of the day. Like, I love the Kenneth Branagh one just because you get the fun cameos like Robin Williams as the fencer,
Mhm.
the judge.
Yeah.
A probable hit. You have a really lovely Ophelia played by Helena Bonham Carter in her like pre-wacky like Helena Bonham Carter days when she was
B.
still kind of
Burton.
romantic lead. And it's tragic watching her performance. Point being is I don't have a favorite. It just depends on my day and mood. But I will say the first Hamlet I did see was the Mel Gibson one.
Mhm.
Do you remember your first film,
I
Hamlet?
do, and that's where I'm going here. The first
Okay.
movie of Hamlet I ever saw was the Ethan Hawke one from 2000, which is
Interesting.
a very non-classic version of
It's
Hamlet.
not like,
Now,
I
like,
remember there's the convenience store scene and
yeah, he does to be or
yes.
not to be in a convenience store. Or
Amending
no, actually, I
amending
think it was a convenience store or was it a movie rental store? Either way,
one of the two. It's a
Hamlet
modern
is
day.
it's set in the present day, but they keep the text
Yes.
the same. This is in the
Yes.
aftermath of the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and
Yeah.
Juliet, which made people realize, oh,
Yeah.
you can do that in a movie. Cool. It's set in the modern day. Hamlet is an experimental filmmaker, and the Mousetrap play is
Mhm.
not a staged play. It is he makes a weird art film
Yeah.
that catches the conscience of the king. And granted, like I'd already read Hamlet by this point, and I
Yeah.
don't think I'd ever seen it necessarily performed on stage. In fact, it was like I think it was actually very shortly after I read the play for the first time I wanted to
Mhm.
see a version of it, and this was just the one that like my local library just had
Yeah.
easy, like already on the shelf. Grabbed it,
Yeah.
but and it was a sort of a whoa, you can do this in a movie kind of thing,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's really cool. Like Bill Murray plays Polonius, Kyle MacLachlan is
Yeah.
Claudius. Like it's interesting to Julia Stiles is Ophelia. Very interesting cast.
That is a very interesting cast.
That being my first maybe shaped a lot of my opinions about these things because right
Yeah.
out of the gate, I'm like, yes, reading it, I could picture a Pumpkin Pants classic early
Yes.
modern interpretation of this.
Mhm.
And all of those classic versions of the movie don't necessarily give me more than what I can imagine in my head, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, when I
Yep.
read it.
Yep.
And if it's, even if the acting is really good, I think if I am actually picking a favorite from those, the Richard Burton one might actually be my favorite.
That's a good
But
choice.
I'll pull that up if I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like, okay, I need to speed run through a Hamlet, like as a reminder, and
Yep.
I don't feel like reading it right now.
Yep.
But reading it, I can just easily picture Richard Burton on stage in my head. So the Ethan Hawke version, which is directed by Michael Almireda, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, who's actually, I just looked this up earlier, he's done some other, he did a Cymbeline movie just a few years ago, which I haven't seen. But
I have not either.
But interesting interpreter of Shakespeare.
Another one of Ryan's favorite Shakespeare.
Yeah, whatever. But what I think is interesting about the Ethan Hawke version is how it kind of bucks the trend of this is in many ways a straightforward adaptation of Hamlet, but it's not being.
It's kind of like a follow-up to the 90s R plus J DiCaprio.
That's what I just said, the Baz Luhrmann DiCaprio. The Romeo and Juliet.
It's kind of following that vein of.
It very much came in that aftermath.
Yes, of the modern adaptations of Shakespeare and how can we do them?
Yeah,
which is great. I love that. I love that era we went through.
Mm-hmm. But even before that one, there's a movie, perhaps inspired by Hamlet, that always comes up in these conversations. From 1994, the year that you and I were born, one might say.
That's right.
And I want to talk about The Lion King for a moment.
Yes.
Do you remember the moment when somebody pointed out to you for the first time that Lion King was Hamlet?
That was at Stratford Shakespeare School that season, because we were seeing Hamlet. And, every morning after seeing a production, we would all sit in a group and kind of discuss our thoughts on the production the night before. And somebody in the group pointed out, and the director kind of smirked, and our course director smirked when the one kid said, there's a lot of Lion King elements in there. You see the director's work going, yeah.
I think this Hamlet might have been inspired by The Lion King.
Right? Exactly. The smirk from the director of just, okay, they're seeing the bigger world that Shakespeare has inspired, that it's not just, as you said, pumpkin pants adaptations. The joy of Shakespeare is that he can be taken and remolded in so many new ways that it makes it fun. I enjoy, even in Game of Thrones, well, the fact that we get a Titus Andronicus pie eating scene at one point in that show, and everybody was like, "Oh, Shakespeare!" I'm like, guys, I know, but everybody
Shakespeare's ripping off Ovid, by the way.
yes, or there was, or even even that whole final episode of that season with the whole pie eating, and you also have the death of Pycelle with all the daggers, very Julius Caesar-esque. There's a lot of Shakespearean moments where people kept coming up to me after watching Game of Thrones going, "Did you catch that, Shakespeare?" So I'm like, guys, yes, I do. but it's the joy of Shakespeare gets to crop up in so many fun ways that if you know the material and you know the canon, you get a whole new joy of experiencing Shakespeare. And that's why I love and that's why I always champion it being studied. As much people go, "Oh, it's boring," and is there new stuff we can study? And this will be a whole editorial of Shakespeare in school. You and I have talked about doing that one on its own. So we won't dive deep into it, but just my stance is the joy of Shakespeare is getting a chance to learn the material and then being able to spot where everybody has taken from that original fountain of material and has spun off and inspired. Like the fact that we had that last Sydney Sweeney movie with Glenn Powell, what's their name? Where basically it's a very,
Anyone But You, or is that
exactly. It was it's and I did watch it just because everybody kept saying it was a rough adaptation of Much Ado, and I watched it and went, I can see some elements of it, but it's kind of like She's the Man. It took loose elements and spun a different story, but it's there. Like the DNA of Shakespeare can be found in many places throughout art, and that's a joy.
So this is interesting. Why I posed the question as, do you remember the first time it was pointed out to you? One, because it has to be pointed out to children,
children are going to get on.
It's usually a child's entrance point into Shakespeare is, you know, the thing you already like. That's Shakespeare, buddy.
That bird is Polonius.
But why I kind of bring
Yeah.
that up, because I distinctly do not remember the moment that
Okay.
was pointed out to me. I'm sure it was like in elementary school, some
Probably.
kid or
Somewhere around
teacher or someone.
there.
But I do remember that it was something that was pointed out to me long before I'd ever read or seen Hamlet.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's notable because my idea of what Hamlet is was vastly shaped by, oh, Lion King, but with people, until eventually reading
Yeah.
Hamlet. And I kind of actually want to challenge a point you just said about how studying Shakespeare gives you this appreciation for the Shakespeare and everything. Because my reaction to reading Hamlet for the first time was, hang on, I think I've been lied to about the Lion King. Or,
There's no wildebeest stampede in Hamlet.
well, no, not even like, because obviously I understand, but like, I was struck by how not like the Lion King it was, and not just because of like cosmetic details about which animal is which person,
Yes.
but plot wise, I was very struck by this is so. Okay, let me pose it as a question to you, Mac, as
Mm-hmm.
the champion of we need to study Shakespeare because then you get a better appreciation for the Lion King or whatnot. Explain to me right now, like I'm a 5-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
a 5-year-old who's read Hamlet, assume.
Sure, why not? Yeah, good
Ex-
job, 5-year-old.
explain to me,
Mm-hmm.
line things up for in what ways is the Lion King Hamlet?
For sure. So the story. So what's neat, and how do I get jump into this? Okay. So the way I look at it is Lion King and Hamlet are similar, but basically the whole beginning of the film, basically up to the wildebeest stampede, is like prologue. Like it's stuff we hear about
Yes.
in Hamlet, but we don't actually ever see it. Like we're like, the kingdom was good. Old King Hamlet was, a good king, and everybody loved him, and then he dies suddenly, and all of a sudden bad things happen in the land. So point being is that like they're like basically what they did is they took a lot of elements of that story and retwisted them in new ways. Like Simba and Hamlet are very clearly following that journey of loss and grief and well, obviously they changed the ending because they can't have Simba die like in a child's movie.
Is that
Um,
all they change?
well, once again, he
Is it the
learned.
same journey minus the fact that he just doesn't die at the end?
No, it's a bigger journey because Hamlet dies and doesn't quite get the bigger picture of finding your place because he gets so stuck on avenging his dad. Like Simba goes through a whole bigger journey of learning your place, but he has the moments like the ghost dad saying, basically, avenge me. But it's not really avenge me now. It's more, you have to go back into the circle of life. You have to reintegrate yourself. You can't run away from your pain and your grief. You have to face it head
It,
on and go forward.
can we pause
But
there for a moment?
okay.
At what point in the movie does Ghost Dad show up?
He shows up at the beginning. That's once again. That's
In the movie Lion King?
Oh no! Oh, sorry. In the I thought you meant in the play.
Yes. Okay.
No,
Well, compare the
sorry,
two. Let's
sorry.
talk about this.
Sorry. So Ghost Dad shows up at the beginning of the story
In Hamlet,
because
in Shakespeare's Hamlet, as opposed
yeah,
to
yes,
Roger
in
Allers
Hamlet,
as the Lion King.
yes, who just passed away actually.
Yes, R.I.P.
Yes, R.I.P. In Lion King, it comes later because we've had way more story that is not part of Hamlet, even though we hear about it, but we don't actually ever see it. So once again, you couldn't have it at the beginning because it makes no sense to start with the wildebeest stampede. What makes the
No,
wildebeest
yeah,
stampede and the death of Mufasa so great is that we've gotten to see, you know, what he was as a king and appreciate who he was as a dad and as a ruler. In Hamlet, we only hear about it kind of in that first scene with Claudius and Gertrude and Sullen Hamlet in the banquet hall after Gertrude's married Claudius. And they say, oh, old he doesn't even get a name. I think it's just called Old King.
Old King Hamlet.
Old King Hamlet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Hamlet
kind of
Senior.
yeah, exactly. He's Hamlet Senior. He doesn't actually get a proper name.
That is his
Uh,
proper name. That's very important to the themes of the
yeah.
play.
Yeah. Point being is like we hear about it, we don't see it. The power of that moment of the death of Mufasa hits because you appreciate who Mufasa was. So once again, they took Hamlet, but they ratcheted and fixed the stories in ways that made it more powerful. But they still had elements there that you can clearly see our DNA of Shakespeare. It's like 10 Things I Hate About You. It's not a direct beat for beat adaptation. They took the best elements of Taming of the Shrew and turned it into 10 Things I Hate About You. They took the best emotional and story elements and themes of Hamlet and put that into an animated film and made it work. Like, it's not a beat for beat, but there's enough there that you can pull correlations of kind of like Zazu is absolutely a Polonius type. This doddering, over the top, you know, a kind of Malvolio-esque, fussy britches character.
Now, let me ask you something about that.
Yeah.
What is Polonius's function in the play Hamlet?
Well, he's advisor to Claudius. He's there to kind of give Claudius somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm. And what does Zazu do in the movie The Lion King?
He gives Mufasa somebody to talk to, as well as Simba, as well as he's an exposition person where he has to set up certain elements of the story at certain times. Like the fact that we come back to Pride Lands after Scar's taken over and it's Zazu in the cage saying, well, this never happened when Mufasa was around, and all the food's gone, and Scar, we got to do something. It gives Scar somebody to talk to. Same thing with Simba and Nala and Zazu at the time of, you have to set them up as a couple. Zazu's a perfect kind of staunchy character to do that, because he's going to follow the rules and say, oh, well, you guys are betrothed. You guys are going to end up together.
Because Zazu is Nala's dad.
Once again, it's not direct.
I know, and I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious here, but I think
taking the elements and reworking them in a way that fits their story. But they're taking the bigger elements of the fussy advisor to the king is there as what they took. Just how you take like clearly Claudius and Scar are very similar to each other and have their elements that are very much alike, and you have. Like I don't think there's a great example. A lot of people say Timon and Pumbaa are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but once again, it's very loose. Where it's the only thing that's similar to them is that they are friends of the lead.
That's literally all it is.
That's really all they have,
and that they're like funny side characters, I guess,
and that they're funny side characters. But that's basically all we get as like how they tie to their kind of counterparts. There are other elements. Once again, you're taking rough elements and you're transposing them in and putting them through the new machine.
Well,
but you still have the bigger story.
Why I'm being pedantic about this?
Yes,
and I get
where are
that
you
this
going
is
with this, Ryan.
Well, I think this is an exercise in pedantry, because if you actually do try to line things up, it's so fundamentally different that it's barely even the same at all. It is like so loose as a connection that like it's actually like it's shocking how like different it is, when to the extent that people love pointing out how similar it is. But like, and I was harping on the ghost a moment ago. Mm-hmm. You're right that in the because we have so much backstory built into this that it doesn't make sense to start with the ghost, of course, because Mufasa's alive. But how does the ghost function in The Lion King? He shows up at the 11th hour, the beginning of Act 3. He
is a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, he tells Simba, you have to go back and kill your uncle, and then Simba instantly does it. Can you explain to me what the plot of Hamlet is?
Well, hold on. Mufasa doesn't say kill Scar.
He has to go, basically, he doesn't say that.
He has to go put himself back in the circle of life.
All the more reason why it's different, but basically he says, hey, you got to go do something about your usurper uncle, and Simba's like, yes, father, I will.
But that ties into the bigger part of the first part of the film. Like the reason why Ghost Dad works later on is because it's harkening back to, and even the music motif that Hans Zimmer wrote is the same as when young Simba and Mufasa are in the grasslands, and they have that final moment before the wildebeest stampede. In the next scene of, the stars look down, the kings of the past look down. Remember who you are. You are my son. There's they're harkening back to that moment. And it's there to remind Simba of his spot. And ultimately, I think Ghost Hamlet's dad's message is wrongly interpreted by Hamlet, where it's like kill your uncle, yes, but I think it's a bigger thing of you got to move forward, like don't linger. But Hamlet takes it the wrong way because he gets so caught up in the revenge and anger at his mom and everybody in the world.
Well, but what Hamlet notably does is he questions the order given by his ghost father. The entire play is about his indecision on that point.
Yes, he's the most action hero.
Yeah, which is why I think it's just kind of like, yes, it's all very cosmetic superficial comparisons is my point here.
Yeah.
That ghost dad shows up because we need to have a ghost dad because that's what Hamlet does,
Yeah.
but it like functionally is the exact opposite of what it does in Hamlet. In Hamlet, it is a source of metaphysical uncertainty of, I don't know if I can even trust the ghost. I don't know if it's a malevolent force. I don't know if I should behave this way. What do I do? I'm going to spend 5 acts stewing on this decision. Whereas in The Lion King, it's yep, we need to have a ghost dad, so here's where we're going to put it. Go, hero, do the hero thing. And he does, because it's not because it's not about the same thing at all. It like fundamentally. The extent to which Simba has that kind of Hamletian indecision is just motivated by grief and shirking his responsibilities that he runs off to elsewhere, first out of fear of Scar, or fear
but it's more of grief that he blames himself.
And that's why he doesn't go back and why he doesn't think he'd be a good king. But that's not in Hamlet like at all. That's yes, they're both about grief, but it's wildly different interpretations about what grief means. And he doesn't he doesn't have the kind of indecision or he has his own version of indecision, but it's completely like unmotivated by the ghost. The ghost is the thing that snaps him into you got to do the thing because circle of life, and because I'm looking down on you, buddy boy, and you're the true king. Hamlet actually never even thinks about the fact that he should be the true king. That never comes up into play.
Once again, they kind of take that from
there's no circle of life in Hamlet actually.
But once again, because in Hamlet it's all about I always interpreted Hamlet as the all-consuming power of grief, where basically grief has stagnated and rotted Denmark because Hamlet can't get past it to go, no, he should be king. Because that's always the big thing of why isn't Hamlet king? Because he is old enough to be king. Like, he's not like a 5-year-old child who, logically in that time period they would have had a council like rule in his stead. A regency. Like, Hamlet is old enough, so
he's away at school.
He's away at school. So, but it's one of those things of I'm pretty sure you come back from school and take on the job of being king.
If you're an adult man who is like I think in his like 30s or 40s according to the text. Actually, most
is he really
actors,
that old? I always
there is a line in the text. I forget what the line is or where that says that he's like. It's about just like if you do the math on the years they're describing like, oh, I think he's much older than most actors who play him is. Because he feels like such a teenager.
Well, that's the thing is like I've always pictured Hamlet as like a late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, because most actors do it that kind of age. Even if they are older, they sort of play him down that way.
Yes. Either way, point being is there are elements of Hamlet in Lion King, and it's fun for people who are new to the whole spot the Shakespeare symbolisms and isms of Shakespeare in other works. It's a great fun way to take that. It's like West Side Story. West Side Story is relatively close to R&J, but it's still different. Like, I would argue West Side Story is a better version of R&J by many reasons. But once again, they took the elements of R&J and they twisted them into their new story. They took the elements of dad dies, person grieves, but instead
West Side Story.
No. They're talking about back to Hamlet, Lion King. But it's like they took the elements of Hamlet and just went, okay, because what everybody forgets that Lion King was Disney's. If I remember correctly, I may be wrong about this, but it was their first like original story where they weren't basing off a fairy tale, they weren't basing off a book. Basically, it was them doing it on their own. They were tasked with making their own story. Like Pocahontas is based off a historical figure, loosely based, but it's loosely based. Yeah. You have Oliver and Company being based on Oliver Twist. Mm-hmm. Victor Hugo's Hunchback is.
You could go through the list. We get it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you go through most of the Disney canon up to
most of the early ones are Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian
Brothers
Andersen.
Grimm. I didn't realize this too much later, but even like Fox and the Hound was based on a book. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things of this was their first time. Yeah, right. This was their real first time of we got no book that we're referencing. We are making this up on our own. And clearly somebody in the story department went, hey, Shakespeare could be a good inspiration, not a direct like translation or a direct beat for beat, but we can take a lot of elements of a very famous story and synthesize it down into our story.
You're exactly right about that. And that's
Mhm.
why I guess maybe I'm just venting a little bit of
Mhm.
frustration about how people take that very simple premise that, hey, some of the scaffolding is there, and say over and over again that it's just Hamlet with lions. Because
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
too simplified.
well, it
Like
is.
for
And
people who are getting introduced to that whole concept of Shakespeare is reinterpreted and reused in multiple ways, it's the gateway point.
but I think
But there's
using,
more to it if you have more,
but
mental.
it's not that there's more to it, it's that there's less to it, is my point. Is that on a very fundamental level it
Yeah,
is so not Hamlet, and just that, usurper uncle grieving
yeah,
prince, if
yeah,
that's the question that I want to get into, like with this,
yeah,
and why I'm sort of belaboring this point,
yeah.
is Lion King makes a very interesting case study, I think, for what does it mean for a movie
Mhm.
to be Hamlet, haha.
Yeah.
That
Ha.
what fundamental components or elements of Hamlet must exist for culture to decide that this is Hamlet, the way
Mhm.
that so many people have, like, I think maybe, again, I'm just venting frustrations as I'm a teacher. I teach Shakespeare to students. I
Yeah.
hear this all the time, and my kind of go-to response to students when they say, oh, it's just like Lion King, or it's just
Yeah.
Lion King, is more like the very bluntness of like, oh, point to
Yeah.
me the scene in Lion King where Simba and
Yeah.
Nala's brother wrestle in Nala's grave. Point to me the scene where he has Timon and Pumbaa
Yeah.
murdered by the King of
Yes.
England, like,
Yes.
or rather the King of Botswana. I don't know, because we're
Yeah.
in Africa, but it's a,
Right.
but yeah, like, it's, I think we do both The Lion King and Hamlet a disservice by oversimplifying the
Mhm.
equivalence here, and
Mhm.
we miss important points of tension
Yeah.
in how they are not alike. The
Yeah.
fact that, isn't it weird that the ghost dad gives Simba a very specific instruction at the 11th hour and then he
Yeah.
instantly follows it?
Yes.
How does anybody think this is Hamlet? Like, right?
Well,
Like,
once again, I think it's one of those things of, as you said, like what elements make up the Hamlet story that are
yes,
like the most
that's
important.
what I want to get into.
Yeah. Well,
Please.
for me, like the way I would do it is the big elements are you got to have a dead dad. Like either he's got to be dead at the beginning or die early on in the story to basically then trigger the next part of the story, which is evil uncle usurps the throne, takes it away from our protagonist lead. The land of the kingdom goes to crap in one way or another. Like as they say, something is rotten in the state of Denmark. You got Fortinbras and his army encroaching on Denmark. Like there's a lot of bad things happening in Hamlet
Now,
and
okay, sorry, I could go on a weird tangent about the point you just raised there, but,
about Fortinbras.
well, Fortinbras encroaching isn't what's rotten in the state of Denmark, and if anything, we can blame Hamlet Senior for that because he's the one who killed Fortinbras' father. That is
True.
not Claudius's doing at all.
No, but once again, like there's now an army moving on Denmark. Basically, my point is like war is coming to Denmark. You have a king who has a king who has usurped the throne and taken over and pushed out the rightful ruler, which is supposed to be Hamlet. Like so, basically, like those key elements are there. I mean, if it's really if I want to be really like picky, I'd be like everybody's got to die at the end. Like Hamlet's got to have everybody.
So therefore, Lion King is not Hamlet by that criterion.
Well, but by that criteria, I go. Well, you have to look at the adaptation itself. Like Disney was never going to kill off Sarabi and Simba and Polonius,
Agreed,
they
but
weren't going to
for
go that far.
but for the sake of what is the essential Hamlet, what must a story have to be Hamlet? They can't both be true. Either Lion King is not Hamlet because people don't die, or every people dying isn't a necessary criterion for making a Hamlet.
Well, once again, that's why I said I was being nitpicky about this. Like that is something that's like really nitpicky because it's one
No,
of those elements that doesn't.
we're here to
Yeah,
pick the nits, my friend.
yeah,
This is what
yeah.
we're
Like
doing.
that's the thing is like with Hamlet, everybody dies. Is that the most important element that has to be translated? No.
Okay, so
I,
that's not. I'm asking for what are the
I would
important
say it
elements.
should be there, or at least for sure, your Claudius counterpart has to die.
Okay,
Basically, the
Claudius has to
bad
die,
king, Claudius has to die. Like
but
the
Hamlet
bad king has,
doesn't.
yeah, but like depending on what you're adapting, like that's the thing. Is like, but like other elements of the story, like there should be a fussy, you know, a fussy king's advisor. Like that Polonius is a character that is very recognizable from Hamlet of the fussy advisor to the king. Though whether he dies or not, that is neither here nor there. I mean, once again, but like that's a character type that is very clear. Like when I think of Hamlet, I do think of fussy Polonius being around and being a blowhard, and he's funny. Like I enjoy a good funny blowhard Polonius. So like I would say that's an element that needs to be there. Hamlet should have two friends. Like there should be two friend counterparts. Well, now whether or not they die.
Now let's talk about this for a moment. Yeah. How many friends does Hamlet have in Hamlet?
He has Horatio, and then he has Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
So why is having two friends an essential quality of Hamlet when Hamlet has three friends?
I would say, sorry, so I rephrase. I would say he needs to have at least two friends. Let's put it that way.
Just to be the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern?
Well, let's say Hamlet has counterparts. Like he has friendly counterparts in his story that he works with in his piece. You need to have, it can't just be, Hamlet and Polonius and Claudius. Like that doesn't work. Like there needs to be you need to have a good ratio of equivalent characters in this piece. One could even argue that Nala in Lion King kind of takes a little bit of the ratio role in a way. Like she takes on, because she's not really an Ophelia because she doesn't go mad and die. You know? Like I would say they kind of cut the Ophelia character entirely from Lion King.
Well, let me ask you: is there must be an Ophelia-like love interest? Is that an essential component of Hamlet when you're going through this list? You've already said you think it's essential that there be a stuffy advisor. So
yes.
Why is that more important than there being an Ophelia type?
Because I would say the stuffy advisor falls into the bigger royal court drama that is a Hamlet piece. Like Hamlet is a courtly drama. It deals with a court, like a court that has bad things happening in it. And the stuffy advisor to the king is one of those archetypal roles that does show up. There usually always some type of advisor to the king in a courtly drama, whether it's Sir Hiss and Prince John and Robin Hood, or like Polonius and Claudius, like or even Grima Wormtongue and Theoden. There always is some sort of advisor to the king in these courtly dramas. And in Hamlet, it's a courtly drama, in my opinion.
I think what you're pointing at here is that your personal criteria for what makes it, I think it says a lot more about what you want from a Hamlet than what is essential.
Okay, so then what would your picks be then?
I don't know. I don't have a good
You asked me without having an answer yourself?
Well, I'm asking you because you're the one who's more emphatic about, hey, Lion King is Hamlet, right?
Well, I never said it was Hamlet. I said it was like inspired or loosely adapted.
Sure. Okay, fine. Yes,
by Hamlet. I'm not saying it's a beat for beat.
I'm not saying it's a beat for. I'm not saying you're saying it's a beat for beat. But if you feel like that's a generative comparison to draw, it is because you recognize a certain number of replicable criteria that a Hamlet must have to be a Hamlet.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you what that criteria is, and you're coming up with a bundle of contradictions in the process.
Well, once again, the big ones I've said so far: Dad's got to die. Mm-hmm. The uncle or like familiar family member has to take over and do a shit job at it. The land has to go to crap as a result. There should be the stuffy king's advisor that's part of the court. Whether or not he's
Okay, sorry. Another question, since we're on the stuffy advisor again. Can I ask you, and do some soul searching before you answer this, how much of your criteria for what makes something Hamlet do you think is shaped by The Lion King? Like, would the necessity of a stuffy advisor make the list if not for the fact that The Lion King does have one? The fact that you don't think an Ophelia is necessary is informed by the fact that The Lion King doesn't have one.
I would say, no, the stuffy advisor I absolutely would say is part of the Hamlet story, because that's part of the courtly drama of the piece, and he's a key archetype of that story of the courtly drama. The Ophelia element is one where I'm like, it could, because once again, it could be there, but it's like, it's not essential, like, because Hamlet isn't in love with Ophelia. He's kind of there. She's there, and then she dies. Like, it's sad, but she's driven to that by Hamlet. That's part of that story. But I'm like, yes, get thee to a nunnery. But it's not one of those elements where I'm like, oh my god, if there's no, mad love loss.
Can you feel the love tonight?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I feel the Ophelia thing is so specific to that version that it's like, that if you're going to try and apply it to other adaptations and criteria, it's too specific. Like, it's too, like, narrowing that
But
it
they're
eliminates.
adapting Hamlet ostensibly.
Yes.
So so this is what I'm getting stuck on here.
What are you getting stuck on, buddy boy?
Okay, so okay, if they wanted the Lion King to be Hamlet,
Uh-huh.
I think they have an Ophelia, and I think that is Nala.
Just with a happier ending.
Yeah, well, essentially, I think when the writers of The Lion King sat down to do the exercise that I'm prompting you to do now of what
Yes.
is essential to Hamlet
Yes.
for something to be Hamlet, if they wanted
Mhm.
indeed to make The Lion King a Hamlet of some kind,
Mhm.
they knew that they weren't doing a beat for beat
Yeah.
reproduction. So then the question is, well, what makes something Hamlet? The answers I hear you giving are chess pieces. They're individual people who must show up in this world in some
Mhm.
way. And I guess the rotting Denmark is the chessboard. But
Yeah.
what I think is interesting that isn't coming up in your list is paralyzing indecision, existentialism, the question of to be or not to be, animating the action, sword fighting. Like there's a lot of things in Hamlet
Yeah.
that aren't part of this chessboard chessmen
Mhm.
interpretation of
Mhm.
how you are essentializing it.
I think there. Well, I haven't gone to themes yet. That's a whole other thing.
Okay,
What
sure.
themes
So
in Hamlet
yeah,
need to show up, and I agree with you. Paralyzing grief. Like there should be your character of him, whether or not it's the entire piece or whether or not it's more like a Lion King, where it's like the second act of your 3 act story is being paralyzed by grief. But there should be some form of paralysis of grief that affects your lead.
now
Like he needs to have
grief,
that.
grief or indecision, which is the essential one.
I would say it's grief because the grief leads to more things. Like it opens the door, and how you interpret the grief becomes your unique adaptation. But the big thing is there has to be some form of grief. You have to feel guilt and grief over the loss of your father. Like that has to be there because because that's what we're introduced to. Hamlet is feeling loss and grief when we meet him at the top of the show before he meets the ghost dad. Like before Horatio comes in and says, "Hey, I've seen a ghost up on the wall these last few nights." We see like Gertrude going, "Hamlet, why are you so freaking sullen, man? Like, why are you so sad?" And he goes, "Oh, it's because my dad's dead, and you just marry my uncle." Like, not even like a year after. Like, it's not like there's element like I think that the grief and I would say the grief is the most important thing. The death of the dad needs to trigger grief and guilt in your character. Now, whether or not it goes the
Grief
Simba
and
route,
guilt.
yeah, grief and guilt.
Does Hamlet feel guilty for
I would say, at least when I've read the script, I've interpreted there is some guilt on Hamlet's part of because
is
he
that
doesn't avenge his
because
dad.
is that
He
because you
feels that he
interpret
let
Hamlet through the lens of the Lion King?
no.
Because I don't feel like Hamlet feels guilty about what is he what does he Hamlet feel guilty about?
I think he feels guilty about letting his not doing
Being
more for
away
his
at
dad,
school?
being away
Like
at school, like not being there to help his dad. His dad dies while he's away. Like he comes back and his dad's dead, and because he's been away, not not being home, helping the kingdom. He's been away. Ergo, his uncle gets in and marries his mom. Like there's guilt of lack of duty. Like
hmm.
you're feeling the lack of duty, and that spawns from the grief. Yeah. Either way. Anyway,
I think
what's on your list though? Since now I'm giving you a bunch of stuff to play with. Like what
yeah,
is on your list?
I don't know. See, here's the thing, and this is why I don't like No Fear Shakespeare, like the
Mm-hmm.
the Spark Notes
Oh
contemporary
yeah,
English
that's
translations.
so annoying.
Well,
Yeah.
but why where I'm getting at this, like I think what makes Shakespeare Shakespeare is the language, the
Yes.
meter, this
Yeah.
beautiful poetry. So
Yes.
right off the bat, like if I'm trying to essentialize what I think makes Hamlet, I'd be hard pressed to exclude that.
The
And
text.
the text is Hamlet.
Mhm.
Hamlet is the
Yeah.
text,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Mhm.
And as a result, I think I'd be, I don't think that's a fair. It depends on what the purpose of this exercise is.
Mhm.
But right off the bat, if we're doing that, then like none of the other non-Hamlet, like Lion King, couldn't be Hamlet because of course they're not going to use the Shakespeare text.
Yeah.
That's why the Ethan Hawke one
Yeah.
smartly kept the text, just like
Yeah.
the Baz Luhrmann R&J kept the
Yeah.
text. But yeah, the question is then is like West Side Story that doesn't keep the text, like to what extent is that? I don't know. So I think that's probably like too
I
rigid.
would say West Side Story is a much closer adaptation of
Yes.
RNJ than I would say Lion King is to Hamlet.
And to me, the fact that I agree with that makes me
Mhm.
challenge my assumption that the text must be essential. I don't know. I think I'm not able to come
Well,
up
once
with.
again, if you're sticking to the text, and that's less like that's more just how do I put this? That means you're adapting the play itself versus just adapting the story. Once again,
Okay, so these are the essential components of the story.
yes,
The
yes,
the
yeah,
fabula, not the sujet, to use Russian
exactly.
formalist
Like
language.
R&J is a really, or Westchester is a great adaptation of the R&J story. It takes the elements, puts them through the meat grinder, and pumps out something of its own making, but also clearly of inspiration of R&J. It The Lion King is a product of somebody taking elements of the Hamlet story, and because they were Disney and they were constrained by, can't have Hamlet abusing Ophelia, can't have everybody dying at the end. They kind of really had to take just like I'd almost argue Lion King is almost a mix of like Hamlet means I almost want to say Superman, but it's not Superman, but it's like that thing of like, or like the classic hero's journey. Basically, they took the classic hero's journey, took elements they liked of Hamlet, put them through the meat grinder, and ultimately out came Lion King.
Sure.
Like I would put Lion King in the same box as She's the Man. It is a very loose adaptation of a Shakespeare play. It's not a beat for beat. It's clearly it's the same thing with that whatever that one with Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell was, the What I Hate About You, or whatever that one.
Anyone but you, I think it was
Yes,
called.
once again, it's not like they took elements of that story. It's not a perfect this is this, that is that. And that's okay to me. Like, I'm like, if you want to just take certain elements that have really inspired this particular story, and it makes a really good adaptation that inspires people to go back and read Hamlet, and people are inspired that way, great, go for it. I wouldn't take it as a beat for beat. Like, I would say if the text is a key element of the criteria, then it's gonna ignite a lot of
Yeah.
like
And
story
I'm agreeing
adaptations.
with that.
Yeah.
I think that is too rigid a parameter,
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
would agree that there's
Yeah.
an awful lot of Twelfth Night
Mhm.
in She's the
Yeah.
Man, that there's an
Yes.
awful lot of Romeo and Juliet in
Mhm.
West Side Story, that it's a
Yeah.
close enough that I
Yeah.
see this. I think maybe it doesn't have to be beat for beat,
Yeah.
but it has to follow the same trajectory, I
Right.
think, is maybe something that
Yeah.
I focus on. And I don't think
Yeah.
Lion King does, like, at all.
Well, the ending is so different, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it ends positively while Hamlet ends tragically. It's
Yeah.
two. Basically, the main elements they took from Hamlet were Dad dies, Uncle takes over, the son,
Vague sense of grief, a
yeah, vague
ghost,
sense of grief,
two
Hakuna
friends,
Matata, yeah, two friends are in
two friends who
there,
do nothing similar to their play counterparts.
yeah, exactly,
They aren't conspiring
yeah,
against
right. Like
Simba.
once again, they cherry picked almost that worked for their story. Basically, they went through and went, okay, what elements do we need to make our story work? And that's kind of what they did.
Yeah, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah,
And Lion King is
yeah,
a great movie. I'm not
yeah,
begrudging it for not
yeah,
being more Hamlet. I'm
yeah.
begrudging the cool English teacher who says,
Yes.
"Hey everyone, do you like The Lion King? Well, I guess you like Shakespeare," because, like, no, they are so fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And
Well, once again, like I would use like if I was teaching a English class in high school, and people are do the why Shakespeare, like why Mr. Horner, why do I have to do Shakespeare in school?
mm-hmm.
And my argument would be because his stories have inspired so much more modern material that we have today, and you will get a deeper appreciation for modern material by having studied the Shakespeare canon and learning. And also that also opens the door for the bigger conversation of the Greeks and the Romans and how that inspired Shakespeare. That's a bigger topic altogether, but it's the joy of it opens the door of art likes to be inspired by something like art grows from the root, right? Like everything grows upward. It all comes together in the end. But
Yeah,
then you go and they say, Mr. Horner, well, how where is Shakespeare? Like in other stores, and I go, well, okay, let's look at a few examples, and we go through, we pick West Side Story, and we pick 10 Things I Hate About You, and we can go through and pick out Game of Thrones. We can take out scenes from Game of Thrones, and there's elements there. Like that's the joy of that's what I love about Shakespeare. Shakespeare has infiltrated so many little spots in our entertainment world that it gets to show up in a whole bunch of places. I'm sure, like, if I sat down and said, I'm sure I could probably find a few rap songs that'd be inspired by
Yes,
Hamlet.
Shakespeare was the greatest rapper of them all, says Lin-Manuel Miranda in that cool English
Right?
teacher SNL sketch.
Right?
But
Like I'm sure if you went through the rap lyrics. Point being is that's the joy of Shakespeare. It opens the
yeah.
door
See, to
to
me, and maybe why I'm such
exploring
a,
the world.
I think why I feel like such a grump about all of this is because I feel like that mindset does a disservice to Shakespeare. Like it actually sidesteps what is great about Shakespeare for the purposes of, hey, if you really boil his stories down, the stories that he didn't even come up with, down to their bare ingredients, they show up in other places. Do you like Shakespeare now? Like, no. That like
Well, once again, it's a bigger conversation. It's not. The conversation doesn't stop there. It's that it opens the door to now having a bigger conversation, and then you get to introduce of why is Shakespeare so lovely? Because I agree, the language is huge. Like, I love reading a Shakespeare sonnet. I love picking up a folio and reading one of the Shakespeare plays, or listening to a radio play of Shakespeare that they have on Audible or whatever. Like, there's a joy in the language and in the Iron Pentameter. Like, it's great. It's so much fun. And that's a joy. But nowadays you need to you don't even have to justify it. It's more just you need to make people understand why. Like, why is it like Shakespeare, not Marlowe, or Shakespeare and not, I don't know, naming one of the Greek playwrights.
Aeschylus.
Aeschylus.
Sure.
Like, why is it Shakespeare, not Aeschylus, studied in school?
Sorry, are you
Because
asking me that? Okay. Sorry, you paused for
I mean, I'm sure you probably could have an answer of why.
well, like the British Empire is a big part of
Yes.
like why not
Of
Aeschylus.
course. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, once again, we're getting into a deeper topic.
Yeah. Okay. I did want to go on a whole thing about the 2022 Robert Eggers movie, The Northman, the Viking Hamlet, which I think is really interesting. I don't know.
That is a cool movie.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I saw it once,
okay,
and I enjoyed it. Can I remember everything about it? No, but if you,
yeah, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because we've been going on for a long time,
yes.
and we do want to get to your. Let's actually pitch some new Shakespeare movies now.
Yeah.
What I think was kind of interesting about that, though, is it is ostensibly based on the old Norse, not quite mythology, but like very early loose history that we don't have very good source documents about. That is the quote unquote true story that inspired somebody to write a play called Hamlet that then inspired Shakespeare to write his Hamlet. So, and like, we don't have the Hamlet anymore, nor do we have the old Scandinavian texts about possible real history and real kings that inspired it. But it is like the main character in that, played by Alexander Skarsgård, is named Amleth, and he is like the son of the king who played by Ethan Hawke. Also was fun that he played the King
you
Senior.
Also have Nicole Kidman playing a character
Gertrude
very
alike.
close to Queen. To Queen Gertrude.
Yeah,
like the name is very close. Like, what is her name again? Her name is
I forget. I
like Grundon.
Yeah,
or Gundon.
Well, yeah, like the whole
very close.
Yeah, the usurper uncle is definitely not named Claudius because that's a Roman emperor. And also the funny thing about just fun little bit of Shakespeare trivia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many times the name Claudius shows up in the dialogue of Hamlet?
I don't.
None. The word Claudius is never said aloud in the text of Hamlet. It shows up in the stage directions, like of the dialogue tags.
So where's the name from then?
That's what Shakespeare named him in the like in his script. But they only refer to him as the king or my uncle, or which is wild. That, but yeah, if you watch
maybe his name threw off the pentameter too much, and Shakespeare was like, I don't want to use his name.
Yeah, it's just interesting. But anyway, okay, wait, The Northman, which like it's such an interesting movie to watch because it is so like patently Hamlet alike, and yet is like, you know, the most like badass, like, you know, dudes fighting and sword fight action.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah, like it's super, very well made. I don't like that Nazis think it's, you know, supports their bad race science, but that's not the movie's fault. But but yeah, like I really enjoyed this movie, and I think it does it does what people claim the Lion King does better than the Lion King actually does,
For
because
sure.
it lines up in a way, but it does that by being like, this is quote unquote what Hamlet was based on, even though it's
Mhm.
obviously not.
Yeah.
And like, but you can really, like, Willem Dafoe plays a character who's kind of like Yorick the Jester, and
Yes.
we get like, his,
Anya Taylor-Joy plays Olga, very close to Ophelia.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
she doesn't do Ophelia stuff in the
No,
plot. I
it's
think
correct.
that
She doesn't go mad.
well, there is maybe like a little hint, because like the last
Yeah.
we see of her is him like jumping off the boat because like, oh, never mind, you're pregnant, I need to go kill my uncle now. And
Right.
like she's sort of like gives like a guttural scream that maybe like makes us think that, oh, is this like the beginning of her madness story? I don't know,
Yes.
but there's just like so much little stuff that I think is like
Mhm.
enriched by comparing it to Hamlet in a way that I don't find the Lion King is. I think the fact that it's like such a macho tough guy, you know, Vikings fighting each other, Revenge of the
Mhm.
Sith volcano battle kind of movie.
Bum, ba,
That
bum, 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 bum.
that like it, because it's just so not what
Yeah.
Hamlet is in that very like, thematic
Yeah.
metaphysical sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, like, and also just like the fact that there's so much interesting like
Mhm.
disenchantment throughout the story. Like one of my favorite scenes in that movie is that he needs to go get like a magic sword that was prophesized that he'll use to kill his uncle, and
Very King
like,
Arthur.
yeah. And so he goes on this like the mini side
Mhm.
quest to get this magic
Yeah.
sword, and it's being like guarded by this like skeleton in armor.
Mhm.
And when he takes the sword away,
Yeah.
the skeleton comes to life, and he has to like fight it, and he fights it and defeats it. And then
Yeah.
as soon as that fight ends, the camera pans to he's still standing there by the skeleton. That was all a dream,
Mhm.
and he just takes the sword, and the skeleton collapses because it's not a zombie soldier guarding this magic
Yeah.
sword. It's just yeah, go steal the sword from a dead guy. Basically, is
Mhm.
what so like the fact that watching that scene, I was like, oh my god, like what is happening? Like I didn't think
Right.
this is something that fits in this world, and then indeed
Mhm.
it doesn't, but that's kind of playing interestingly with the metaphysical substance of the big
Mhm.
question of Hamlet. Like, is the ghost real? Is Hamlet mad? Is he
Mhm.
hallucinating this? There's another scene later in the Northman where we think our protagonist might be dying, and he's like, a Valkyrie picks up his body and is riding on a horse
Mhm.
to like, take him to Valhalla. But then he
Mhm.
wakes up and it's the Anya Taylor Joy character just like, saved him and took him away. And in
Yeah.
his mind, he turned it into that. So the disenchantment of it, I think, fits really interestingly into like a reading of like
Mhm.
what Hamlet means. Anyway, I could go on and on
Mhm.
about this movie that I think is really interesting, but
It's a good movie. I need to go back and rewatch it
yeah,
again.
I think it and The Lion King form an
Mhm.
interesting dual dialogue about
What is
thinking,
needed to make Hamlet
yeah,
like
what
an
makes it.
adaptation?
There's a really interesting book called The
Mhm.
Necessity of Theater by the philosopher Paul Woodruff.
Mhm.
And he goes on a lot about things in that book, but there's one chapter in the middle of it where he actually like does a version of this exercise that I'm proposing of like
Mhm.
what makes something Hamlet. And I forget what the actual, it's been a long time since I read this book. I forget what his actual conclusion was, but like he kind of goes through the opening of that chapter. He's like, let's say you're watching an elementary school play,
Right.
Hamlet, and they're gonna change a whole bunch. So what is that like essential Hamletness? And I think that's the question. That's, he even mentioned in there that like most productions of Hamlet prior to Tom Stoppard would just cut Rosencrantz and Guildenstern because
Yeah.
they're a pretty small presence in it and they don't really matter and it's a very long play.
Yeah.
Every production of Hamlet will cut stuff just by virtue
Yes.
of how long it is, very few exceptions. And so
Kenneth Branagh.
yeah, well, that was the kind of feat that Branagh was trying
Yeah.
to accomplish. But then, yeah, so it's like, well, what can you cut and still have it be Hamlet? And
Right.
for a long time, they thought, of course, you can cut these two guys. They contribute basically nothing to the
Mhm.
plot. But then Stoppard made a funny thing about them, and now you'd be
Yes.
hard pressed to find a director who wants to cut them because people are expecting them. Because now people watch
Yeah.
Hamlet just as much to be like, what's the backstory of those guys that I like from
Yeah.
that other play? I forget if Woodruff in that chapter, again, been a long time since I read it, came to a conclusion about what he thinks is the essential Hamlet. But
Mhm.
I am interested in this question, and I think I would be hard pressed to come up with an answer to what is essential Hamlet that forms a test that the Lion King could pass.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the Northman would necessarily pass that test either, because I think it is like such a weird take.
Well, once again, I think there's elements. They took
Yeah,
elements of the Hamlet story and
yeah,
used it their way.
yeah,
Like, and that's the joy of a story adaptation versus a direct play adaptation. Like they're taking the story. Like once like Romeo and Juliet and West Side Story are very close. I would say probably it's one of the closest you get because you have
Closest you could
Mercutio and
get
Riff,
doing
Bernardo
that.
and Tybalt. Anita takes the role of the nurse and Lady Capulet in one. Bernardo kind of takes the role of Tybalt and what's his name, the dad, Capulet.
Yeah.
There's enough character elements and story beats that it's pretty darn close.
But I think, yes, you're right. But
Yeah.
what you just did, again, you're naming chess pieces. But
Well, that's the reason I get into.
No, and
the
I
themes
think
of it of
yes, and
lovers
that's
torn asunder, and there are plot elements that are
Yes,
there, like the Jets attacking Anita's to when Mercutio and his guys go after the nurse. Not to the same extent that
Well, no, that's trying to make it equivalent of that. I think derails the comparison. But what I think West Side Story does really well is it found a then contemporary context.
Yes.
For what does dueling households, forbidden love, breaking that divide through love, what would that look like today?
Yeah.
And I think that essential theming to me is more important than do they have a Mercutio in this?
Right.
Which is and I don't know. It's interesting because I think there's compelling arguments that could be made from all of these types of elements being essential elements.
Yeah.
But the more elements we feel are essential, the harder it becomes for things to check those boxes and pass the test.
Absolutely.
Pre-existing end. But the less you provide, the further we get from the Shakespeare thing that we're saying is that. The fewer criteria you impose, the easier it becomes to pass the test, but the further we get from Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet. Somebody who has a version of the criteria that the Lion King can pass means that they're operating on a list of criteria that is quite removed from Hamlet. That they're saying to be Hamlet is to not be Hamlet. Ain't that the question?
Yeah.
All right.
That is the question. Yeah.
I've ranted about all this stuff. I know there's more I could say about Hamnet in this conversation, but I don't want to spoil for you. Do you want to get into the thing that you wanted this episode to be about all along that I have derailed us from?
Buzzfeedy idea?
Yeah, let's do some fun BuzzFeed. Why don't we?
Sure. Okay. So basically, you and I both said we're going to do 3 each of which ones we think warrant a 2026 new look. And I will say right away that Hamlet Mackers were automatically off my list. We have done way too many of those. I'm ready to leave those on the shelf for a while.
Do you want to do you do one, I do one?
Yeah, let's do that. All right, you start, Ryan.
No, you go first, actually, because mine are sort of weird approach that I took to this question. So I want to hear, since this was your prompt for an episode, what is the number one Mac answer to this question?
Yeah. So one of my top ones, and I brought this up in other episodes in the past, Merry Wives of Windsor. I think I love that play.
Yeah, it's a good play. I like it.
I mean, yes, I did a production of it, so it does hold a place for it. But I just think the idea of a female comedy duo leading a piece and having fun abusing this, boorish guy, it's so ripe in this day and age. And whether or not it's a straight adaptation of the play, or if it's, once again doing more 10 Things I Hate About You, taking those elements and the key elements of the story and twisting them, that play there gives a lot of material, whether it's straight adaptation or, story adaptation. I think there's a lot there you can play within that. I love Merry Wives. I think there's a lot of good juice in that story. And it hasn't been done often. Well, I was looking at the list on Wikipedia. Once again, do Wikipedia. So
yeah, Wikipedia, in the age of AI, Wikipedia has become the last bastion of consensus reality that we have.
Exactly. Yeah. The last time there was one done of Merry Wives
of a movie specifically.
Yeah, of a movie like a film was Chimes of Midnight was 1966. There was a BBC television adaptation that actually stars Richard Griffith, so people know him as Uncle Vernon in Harry Potter as Falstaff, and that was done in 1982. So it's not been a play that people have been jumping back to adapt and revisit, but I think it's such a fun piece. Yeah, I love a good comedy, and I think female-led comedy is one that sorely lacks in our modern era. You could do so many fun female comedy pairings with Mistress Page and Mistress Ford. So much fun in there that you could play with. So yeah,
I think that's a very good answer, and
Yeah.
one that sort of circumvents my concern of, well, there's just so many movies about all of
Yeah.
these. Like maybe this one doesn't have a lot of movies. And because it's one that's habitually not taught in high school, it's
Yes.
not one that a lot of people know unless you happen to
Yeah.
have read through the whole canon or just
Yeah.
happen to see a production of it.
Mhm.
That, yeah, I think it could introduce a whole new set
Yeah.
of fans to that play.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
who
Okay.
who, who would you do you have who would you like cast as Mistress Page, Mistress Ford,
Oh
Falstaff, maybe
God.
Master Ford? You don't have to if
There's
that's
so much in there. I mean, like, I mean, back in the day, a young Kathy Bates, I think, would have been great. I think now she could end up more as like a Mistress Quickly
Mhm.
type in
Yep.
in that role.
Yeah, I'd see her in
Um,
that.
right? But like, I would say you could have a lot of fun with like an Angela Bassett in there. I think she would make a very interesting one of like what either Mistress Page or Mistress Ford. Pair her with like somebody who's a bit more of a body comic, like a Melissa McCarthy. Like I think you take like a more straightforward actor who hasn't done a ton of comedy, like an Angela Bassett, and you pair her with someone a bit more body and fun, like a Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, type character where you go through and you pair them up, I kind of that odd couple comedy there, and then you put that with like a Falstaff. You could find any like if you want to go for like a non-traditional Falstaff, like a John Cena type, I think could be a lot of fun.
In a fat
Like
suit, or
no,
is it?
no, no, no. Once again, I play him almost like a Gaston buffoonery, like macho guy, because that's kind of who Falstaff is. But if you want to go more like traditional bigger guy, like a Josh Gad type somewhere in there. Yeah, I don't know.
It sounds to me this. I think you want Paul Feig to direct this movie. You want it to be like the Bridesmaids version of just with at least with the
I don't
lady
know if I do a
casting that
Paul
you.
Feig. I definitely think. No, I really would have loved to have seen it. Do a Shakespeare comedy adaptation is Mel Brooks. I feel like he would
Interesting.
be like back in the day, like in his heyday. I feel like he would have had fun with doing a adaptation of
I
Shakespeare.
just don't feel like Shakespeare suits his comedic sensibilities. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, I don't
Eh,
know. I don't know. Anyway, what's your first one
okay.
out of the gate?
Okay. Well, you said the ones that we've had a lot of movies of,
Yeah,
or just like nix them off your list. I
I took them
disagree.
off. Okay.
I would be inclined to agree if I just felt like if I was just proposing,
Yeah.
hey, we haven't had a movie of this in a while, let's do
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
I approach my list very differently than I think how you approached yours,
Okay.
of its specific versions of the movie I want
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah.
And I will say my first choice is Macbeth, directed by Robert Lepage.
We already got that.
Yes, but what we got was a play that really wanted to be a movie. And I think we should just let him make that movie already. Okay, well, and I say this with caveats.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
contradicting what I said in my original review of that stage production
Yes.
at the Stratford Festival. For anyone who's not like in Southern Ontario listening to this is confused. So this past season at the Stratford Festival,
Yes.
Robert
Lepage made a
Lepage,
comeback.
he never left. But Robert Lepage, a very famous French Canadian theater director, very artsy, avant garde.
Yeah.
He directed a biker gang interpretation of Macbeth using
Yes.
the original Shakespearean text, but the aesthetic was entirely 90s Quebecois biker gangs.
Yes.
And I had my problems with that production. I voiced them in my review.
Mhm.
But the thing that I thought was most interesting about it was the cinematic aspects to it.
Right.
That the production of the three major stages that they have at the Stratford Festival, the way he conceived the staging could only have been done at the Avon
Yeah.
because it's the only proscenium theater.
Correct.
And the
Mhm.
framing was like a film aspect ratio. This is not the kind of Shakespeare production where you have actors entering from the aisles. Everything was immaculately composed in that frame. Right to the fact that we have an opening credit sequence, like with
Yes, we
the
do.
actors' names projected, and that's a common staple
Yeah.
in a lot of Lepage's productions.
I was gonna say he did in Coriolanus.
Yeah, he did it.
Yeah.
He did it in Far Side of the
Yeah.
Moon, which was
Yes.
just had a revival at Canadian
Yeah.
stage. He approaches theater very cinematically, and my favorite moment in that production was when the gas station explodes into the barbecue.
That is a really cool moment, and then
It's
comes
really
the barbecue.
cool, and like
Yeah.
because it's him making a film editor's match cut, but
Yes.
realizing it in live theater. And
Mhm.
the point that I made in my original review is that I actually hope that this isn't a proof of concept for a film, because what I found so compelling about it, or rather so cool about it, was just that all of these little things
Mhm.
that would be very straightforward to accomplish in a movie,
Right.
but the fact that he does it live before our eyes is what makes it impressive. And that match cut, yeah,
Mhm.
you could just you film an exploding
Yeah.
gas station,
Yeah.
and then you cut to it's a
Have you watched the
barbecue.
pro shot yet that they did this year from the festival?
Oh no, I haven't seen the pro shot. I saw it when it
I'm
was
pretty sure
live at
that
Stratford.
I'm pretty sure they did do a pro shot of it. So I'm interested to watch that scene just to see how they do it
Well,
as a pro shot.
I'd hope that they don't do any crazy editing on it, because the
Yeah.
what makes it cool
Yeah.
is that the live apparatus of theater is
Yeah.
replicating film editing. Like
Yes.
I hope they do no crazy cinematic tricks in the pro shot, because that's what was cool about that production.
Mhm.
I read other reviews at the time that said that, like, I kind of wish that he had just made a movie, because it seems like he's very invested to make a movie. And while I disagreed with that take at the time, and still for the most part do disagree, because I think the
Mhm.
fact that it was live theater replicating cinema techniques and
Mhm.
aesthetics is what made it so interesting to me.
Mhm.
I would still like to see that as a movie, honestly. I think it would, the take he took on it, the biker
Mhm.
gangs, Tom McCamus, who I adore,
Yeah.
I think was a little too soft spoken and grumbly for a stage version, but having a well mic'd film would maybe
Yes.
suit that subdued
See, that's
version
the
of the
thing about
character.
like about doing the Scottish play on film. It's one of those things where like the Michael Fassbender promised me a Braveheart meets Shakespeare thing where it's going to be big and epic, and then it was all very up close. Couldn't really see his mouth because of his beard. Denzel kind of did a similar thing where it's very slow, very plodding, and I'm like, no, Knackers needs to be fast, it needs to be sharp, it needs to be quick, it needs to be
Yeah. And I think we
aggressive.
can tighten the
And
quickness of
yeah, like
of this.
I don't want to see another plodding Knackers
Yeah.
chomping around on screen or on stage. I want to see a like bloodthirsty, aggressive, like like
And I
like
think
like, I love see Quentin Tarantino do a Knackers. I think that'd
uh,
be fun
that would
to
be
see him
fun,
go at.
but I don't think I want him to make that. Anyway, he's only making one more
Yeah.
movie, so he literally
Yes.
won't, unless his
Well, he
final
says he's only
movie.
making one more, but we'll see.
Yeah, I guess why I kind of
Mhm.
latch on this point, though, even though it's
Yeah.
exactly contradictory to what I said in my review, and an
Yeah.
opinion that I more or less still hold. I'm not
Mhm.
saying I need this movie to exist,
Yeah.
but I do think we haven't had a Mackers like this in a movie. It's only
Yeah.
people who have seen it at Stratford who have
Yes.
seen this version. And I
Yeah.
think Robert Lepage doing a biker gang
Mhm.
Mackers would blow a lot of people's minds if he made just like an honest to goodness, easy
Yeah.
rider type movie
Yeah.
out of it. And a lot of the stuff that ground the tension of the play to a halt, like just the
Yeah.
having to turn those bikes around on the narrow
Yes.
stage, if you just do like long soaring shots
Yes.
of, motorcycles on
Mhm.
the road, you can cut to it a lot more
Mhm.
efficiently. It would lose a lot of the magic of that production. Just having the actual match cut will never be
Yeah.
as impressive as how did he do that? This guy's a wizard.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's a movie that is worth making, even though I'm glad that I got to see the stage version of it. I don't think it's an
Mhm.
either or situation. And
Yeah.
a movie could fix a lot of the flaws of the stage version.
Yeah. Like I would say compared to Coriolanus, this Mackers was very
Yeah,
flawed.
agreed.
And actually, my second pick ties a bit into
Really?
uh
You
it,
want
it, it
Lepage to make a Coriolanus movie?
no,
Okay.
no, no, no,
Sorry.
no, because my issue with Lepage's Mackers was that he picked the wrong play for the for the adaptation. Like
Okay.
the play itself didn't lend itself to the biker adaptation. What he should
Interesting.
have picked, and the one I would happily see him do as a film, is take Biker Gang but do it with Titus Andronicus.
Interesting.
Like I think that the story of Titus Andronicus in this day and age, all about revenge being all consuming and just this never ending beast that you have to keep feeding because it's tit for tat. It's that you did that to me, so I'm gonna do worse to you. And we're seeing that played in our politics today. That's bleeding into social aspects where we are now just so blinded by our anger at our perceived other side. Trying to bridge the chasm is becoming harder and harder. And the story of Titus, in my reading of it, has always been like the downfall of that story is Titus sacrifices Tamara's son because they killed his son in battle, and it's that and he's performing the duty of what he thinks needs to be done, and that ultimately leads Tamara and Aaron to then exact revenge, and they go through this, and ultimately everybody ends up dying in the end. Everybody gets
Yeah.
wiped out in a very tragic way. except for I think the brother of Titus. I think he lives.
Yeah. Marcius lives. Young Marcius
Yes.
lives.
Yeah.
Aaron kind of maybe lives. His fate is sort of a little
Yeah. So it's not up
open.
there. But anyway, but yeah, that's one where I'm like, that in like a biker gang setting
Okay,
could
well,
be really interesting to play. But it doesn't have a bigger game. It could be a modern day kind of political setting. Like
I was just going to say, I think
there's a lot of fun you could do.
I honestly feel like you have two separate interesting ideas here, because I feel like if I think I agree that the biker gang setting suits the world of Titus so well, because it's just like so bloody and over the top and violent and but I kind of feel like if the point that you want to get at is that, hey, it's kind of like our politics now, I feel like the biker gang is a bit too much of an oblique angle
once again, like two different settings, like depending on how you would want to do it, like up to you. But I'm just saying that the story of Titus itself worked, and I think for Lepage, in his biker gang thing, I think Titus would be in a better fit for that gang war setting than like the Scottish play. Like
I agree. I agree with that.
Like the fact that he cut Lady Macduff and all that stuff ticked me off, because I was like, why?
But kept the very long scene with
oh my god, I hated that scene.
But there were pool tables.
That scene. With the pool tables,
I always hate that scene, but it was especially
even worse that they cut Lady Macduff and the tragedy of that. Like it was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Either way, point being is Titus.
But it was the best version of the Porter I've ever seen, so I'll give him that.
Yes, she was great. Like I loved her in the Porter. She actually did make the Porter work in that scene.
Yes, the Porter that so rarely works. Yeah.
Like I think back now, like seeing a Tom McKenzie versus Lucy Peacock in a Titus production would have been so good.
Yeah,
it's so much fun.
Now I just want to see that. Lepage, get
right,
back here.
right, and having
wouldn't it be hilarious
playing Marcus, what's his name, Aurelius, the brother to Titus. Like you could have that there. Like there's so much there with like the biker gang and the violence of that story, and the fact that we know in history. Like that was the other thing about the biker gang wars were incredibly. I listened to a podcast about where they took a whole gang of them out into a farmer's field and shot them all, and the farmer comes upon them the next morning. And it was like, it's a violent thing, and the fact that the Macros play really doesn't get into that element of the story of the of where he's setting it. Like I just felt like the setting itself is cool. The play was just the wrong pick, and Titus I think would have been better, and I would have loved to see, because the last time we did Titus as a film,
with the Julie Taymor, I'm sure, probably.
You're pretty darn close. There was a 2017 adaptation set in New Delhi called The Hungry.
Okay, yeah, so Bollywood Shakespeare is its whole separate conversation.
But like the last American film was Titus in 1999.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was based on a stage show she was doing on Broadway at the time, but then became a film.
Yeah, I would watch a new Titus movie, especially I do think the biker gang suits it. I also do just like why I say you have two good ideas here is because I would also like to see like a Succession sort of men in suits version of Titus, because I think that would sort of, if you want to hearken it to the contemporary state of politics and the sort of us versus them factions, then that might be the better way of hitting that with a less oblique angle than ancient Rome or biker gangs.
Right, exactly. Like there's so much there with that play. Like I'm just, I'm zhuzhing for. I cannot wait for, as much as I love Angie Cimolino, and I do. I'm excited for the new artistic director to come and hopefully do a new Titus, because they have not touched that play in a long time. Assuming he
doesn't do what he did in Sydney and leave within a year, I'm sure there will be a Titus during his tenure, just by virtue of the fact that it's been a while since Stratford has done Titus. So
it's been so long, and I'm like, oh guys, you got to do it.
And they've done a lot of the high school picks over the past few years that he's got to like dig a little deeper for stuff to do. Okay,
I love it. Okay, what's your number two?
Number two, again, I've approached this whole list from what's the sort of specific version I want to see, rather than I just think we need to do this play again, which just seems like that's how you've approached your list. I want the Denzel Othello to be a movie.
That would be really interesting.
Well,
I mean, Lawrence Fishburne's version, it's not bad.
I like the Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, I like the Lawrence Fishburne Branagh version. I think that works. It exists as like a period setting version.
Yes, but Denzel Othello, I would totally be on board for that.
Well, one, I don't think they're going to do it because they just
they sit on Broadway.
Well, my point would be that they should take that production and do like a film adaptation of it as opposed to a pro shot.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I specifically, and like I even like based on some reviews I read, like apparently Gyllenhaal was the standout in that, more so than Denzel was. And so,
well, honestly, like I feel Denzel's a bit old to be Othello. at
Well,
this
it's
point.
I
Because
don't
how
think
old is
there's
Othello supposed to be?
I don't think we're ever given a specific age for him, and it could go either way in the script. It depends on how you want to play it. But
Fair.
so I don't think there's any textual reason why he couldn't or isn't suited. But I just think like that production, like making the headlines that it did with like the ridiculous ticket prices and that run.
Yeah. We
I
talked about
think,
that.
well, yeah, we certainly did.
Yeah.
And I think on one hand, I feel like they won't do it because part of the aura, the Benjaminian aura of that production was like, yes, you can see Denzel in a movie. You can go see Gladiator 2 if you want to see him be classy in a period drama, but you could only be in the room with him.
That's what to say. You gotta be in the room where it happens.
Whereas I think I would love to neuter the aura of that
Yeah.
production in a way by like, okay, now that it's done, it's not on Broadway anymore. Let's make a movie of it, like, and make all those people feel like idiots for spending that much money.
Well, I mean, his Knackers was Oscar nominated, so Denzel may be like, I want to go at it again.
Yeah,
give it
like,
to me.
He clearly has a passion for doing these Shakespeares. He can choose his own projects at this point. He can write himself a check to make anything. Why not make a movie of it? Not to compete with the Broadway version of because of that.
Yeah, just take the cast and adapt it in their way. Because I think it was like a modern adaptation too.
Like they were wearing like military contemporary uniforms. So like I would like to just see that version of it. That seems like
that's fair.
Just I wasn't going to pay that much to see it live. I don't care enough about the Benjaminian aura of it to care about that. And neither did Walter Benjamin, for that matter. People are misreading that essay a lot. I just think that's a movie that I would like to see as much as I would have liked to see that production. No, there was no way I would pay that much money to see it. Let's democratize this shit.
Yes, I love it. Okay, my number 3.
Okay.
Is one I don't know. I don't know if you would have picked it, but it's Richard II.
Interesting. No, it's not. That's not my list, but make your case.
I mean, for me, like once again, the modern world informing why I think now's the time to do the story. So the last time it was done was 2012, and that was a TV adaptation, part of the Hollow Crown.
Yeah,
with Ben Whishaw.
Well, I deliberately
Patrick
didn't.
Stewart.
For my list, I deliberately didn't pick anything that was part of the Hollow Crown because I think that is an excellent adaptation of the whole Henriade cycle that like I don't feel the need to take the individual components of it for
me. Like
movie.
I would like to see it done not in medieval set medieval time. I would love to see it set in modern time because the whole concept right now and we've seen that with Biden and now Trump is basically a ruler or a king or a president who is clearly unfit, whether by age or by mental capacity or by just demeanor, is clearly unfit to be leading the country, leading the country at a given time, and the journey that happens with their downfall and the usurping and the rise of basically the alternate ruler. I think is so interesting. You could play with today, depending on how you do it. Because so I don't know. Richard saying after C. Stratford.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask. Like,
and once again, there were elements that I think worked, but I think they tried to make Richard II too nice in the Stratford one, where like they try to make him so sympathetic when like the text itself lends it to being that Richard is not a good king. Like he's not meant to be. Oh, he was misunderstood. He actually was a nice guy. Just got too wrapped up in the power. Like he's not a great guy. Like he thinks I think he thinks he's the next coming of God. Like he's meant to be not a great ruler, and then you have the John of Gaunt coming in. Yeah, it's John of Gaunt, right? That comes.
It depends on where you're going with the sentence, because
Bolingbroke. It's Bolingbroke.
Yeah, who becomes
Bolingbroke is the one that comes in, who becomes Henry IV, and so it's the thing of the rightful ruler comes in, and it's kind of like doing the Hamlet thing of bad ruler to good ruler type thing. But it's a different. Anyway, I just like the concept of doing a modern day Richard II. The fact that we haven't really had a film adaptation going through. We've had lots of TV. The last time we had any type of film adaptation was once again Chimes of Midnight in 1966.
Which is so not any individual Shakespeare play. That
exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to call Chimes of Midnight the adaptation of Richard II.
So besides Chimes of Midnight, we have not had another film adaptation. We have lots of TV adaptations.
Really? Okay. I count TV in like, because sometimes it just, you don't have the budget for a Hollywood that it's just a TV. Yeah. I still count that as being film. When was the last standalone Richard II not part of the Hollow Crown even as TV?
There was a British version done in 1997.
Yeah, we're due
with
for
Fiona
one.
Shaw playing
Cool.
Richard II. So once again, Richard II doesn't have to be a young man. He could be an old guy. He could be a woman. Like once again, you could take elements of like you could have a lot of interesting depictions of why is Richard not working as a king, and why does Bolingbroke come in and become Henry IV? Like I think there's a lot of dynamics there in our modern political situation that could really tie in with this piece.
Yeah, I think
I don't know.
when you first
Maybe
said
I'm
this, I
talking out
thought,
my butt.
no, I think you're onto something. When you first said this, I was thinking you were taking the same approach that I took to the Lepage Macbeth, which is that, hey, we just saw a pretty good Stratford production that had a very subversive take, a new adaptation.
It was the first time I'd seen anything besides Ben Wishaw's Holocron. I'd never seen it live. And I came away going, yeah, there's more to this piece. I kind of underwrote it in the histories where I was like, Richard II.
But you're not proposing that we should do Brad Fraser's adaptation directed
because
by Gillian Kiley. No.
I think once again, I think it was a good adaptation. It was interesting to watch. I personally did not agree with their interpretation of Richard as much as I forget the actor's name who played Richard. That
was Stephen Jackman Torkoff.
Stephen Jackman Torkoff. As much as they were really good in the role, I just think the text itself didn't lend it to being as sympathetic interpretation of Richard as the production wanted you to feel. I feel like the production wanted me to come away going with, wow, Richard really got screwed and Bolingbroke should not have taken over. Like, Richard was just misled, and it's like, no, Richard was not a good king. He needed to go.
I think the queer
just like,
angle
25th
made it
Amendment
work.
should be used at times, whether you're too old or not doing your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the queer angle of that production sort of made it work or tied it all together. But anyway.
I mean, once again, Emilio and Stephen were great. Like watching it was really good. It wasn't until after when I sat on the bus on the way home and went, wait a minute.
I'm looking at Wikipedia right now, and this guy might have not been a good king.
Well, I was listening to a whole BBC podcast where they were talking about bad kings of England, and he's on the list. Like, I guess he lucked out one time where basically there was a rebellion, and he walked out to meet the mob and kind of did the Putin-esque thing of, hey, guys, don't do it.
Great example of a good leader to compare him to.
Right? And that's exactly it. Like, Putin and Richard II are very similar. They had one moment where they kind of quelled the mob, and the next thing they thought of, I should be the next great ruler. And it's like not the case. Anyway, point being is Richard II is my third pick. I had to have an honorable mention, but I'll let you do your third pick.
Okay, sure. I don't have an honorable mention, so we'll close out on yours. But okay, before I say which play I've chosen for this, I want to explain the style I have in mind. Okay. Because with all of these, again, it's a specific style or a specific type of production. I know Joss Whedon is bad as a person. # he's been canceled. Yes, I get it.
Yes, he's out,
I really liked his Much Ado About Nothing movie.
Interesting.
The black and white one with all the actors who know from all of his TV shows. I really liked it. That was, I thought, a very fun, quirky, offbeat adaptation of a Shakespeare comedy done in a way that feels very natural on stage, but you don't see in movies very often. I liked it. Not saying, therefore, defend anything about him, just like I wouldn't defend anything about Roman Polanski. Very different kind of types of transgressions, but still. So while I don't want Joss Whedon to make the movie I'm about to propose, I would like that type of style of a Shakespearean comedy. Where it's just, keep the text, modern dress, and like leaning into a kind of like quirky, offbeat sitcom vibes. So like get like a very good TV sitcom writer director to make an adaptation of the Comedy of Errors.
Good pick.
Yes. I love
I don't understand why Comedy of Errors isn't done more.
Yeah, I think it's great.
It's so much fun.
It is such a hammy sitcom scenario of where we have two separate sets of twins that just keep getting mixed up and hijinks ensues. I like it more than I like Twelfth Night, which uses the similar premise because Shakespeare just thought twins were like the funniest thing on earth, and you know what? Maybe he was right.
Well, once again, it's a great situational comedy. Mixed up identities, and twins are a perfect avenue to get into that. But I love Comedy of Errors. I'm always shocked that Stratford hasn't done it more.
Yeah, it's not, I'm sure Jonathan Church will do it at some point in his tenure, assuming he stays for a few seasons. But I think, and it's not because I have anything in particular about Comedy of Errors, like it speaks to our times. I just think it's fun. It is very
Yeah.
sitcom-y. It makes me laugh. I
Yep.
recently, a couple of years ago, when I was in London, I saw it at
Mhm.
the Globe, and it was a
Oh yeah.
it was a very standard pumpkin pants production, which
Yeah.
usually I groan at, but being at the Globe, that sort of like
Mhm.
felt materiality of like I'm
Did the
here.
audience like it? Like, are
Oh
they
yeah,
really
it was
into it?
great. For me, it was the perfect first Globe experience. I know
Okay.
the Globe does do like
Yeah.
more subversive things, or maybe less
Yes.
so now. They certainly did a lot when Emma Rice was in charge.
Yeah.
But yeah, like for me, just like, yeah, I want to stand in the place.
Mhm.
I want to lean on the stage like a groundling, and I want to see a
Yes.
Pumpkin Pants Shakespeare production, just
Yeah.
like they did in his day as the sun
Yeah.
sets. Like that was the perfect one to do it with.
Mhm.
And now that I've seen that, I don't need to see a movie do that version.
Yeah.
I'm sure one or several
Yeah.
already exist that I can watch a Pumpkin Pants
Mhm.
movie of
Yep.
Comedy of Errors. But what I would
When
really
was the
love to
last time it was
see,
done? Let's see.
yeah, you're looking this up
I'm looking this up. See the last time Comedy of Errors showed up
as a movie or
as a
TV. Yeah,
movie. Yeah. Let's
but yeah,
see. The
but I would
last
like.
time. Wow,
Yeah.
Ryan, you hit it on the head. The last TV adaptation was Richard Manette in 1989,
Wow.
and that starred Gordie Johnson. And then there was a 87 TV film adaptation. So out of TV, there's a Indian film version of in
Yeah, again,
1982.
Bollywood Shakespeare is a
Yeah,
whole cottage industry of.
yeah.
Yeah.
There has not been a. Oh, sorry. There was a 1940
Okay.
film adaptation of Boys from Syracuse,
Okay. So yeah,
which is a musical adaptation of the.
that's interesting. So there's already that degree. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we are due for like a not big budget,
yeah.
like Joss
Keep it
Whedon made.
simple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that Much Ado movie. Joss Whedon just called up a bunch of his friends and they shot it in a weekend. Like,
Did they really?
I think
I
so.
totally
I could be
forgot
wrong about
that
the
story.
specifics, but yeah,
Yeah.
like it was like the lowest of low budget things. And yeah, like he's just, yep, I've been working in film and TV for a while. I have all these actors who like working with me, maybe not as much as we thought at the time. You know, they just did a Shakespeare thing. They got Nathan
Mhm.
Fillion to play Dogsbury. I fucking love it. I just want to see a fun sitcom version of my favorite Shakespeare comedy, I guess, is what motivates this pick.
I love it. Okay.
All right, what's
Honorable
your honorable
mention.
mention? Sure.
The honorable mention is one that there's been many film adaptations of, hence why I didn't make the top 3. But it's one I would love to see them do in a claymation, like go full on weird animation claymation style.
Nice.
And that is Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay. Okay.
Like
A Guillermo del Toro stop motion version.
like something
Yeah,
Tim
like
Burton,
Pinocchio.
Guillermo, like something like I think claymation would be such a fun way to interpret this with the donkey transformation and having fun there. I mean, there's a darker version of Midsummer I would love to do at some point where
You
it's
could do
all
that in claymation. Who's to say claymation can't be dark? It's not all Wallace and
I
Gromit
mean,
up
my
here.
thing would be I would cut Pyramus and Thisbe. I would have it
Yeah, do it.
all
Get rid
done
of him.
in. I gotta have that all done in mime because it's all done from Demetrius's perspective of the man who's now perpetually in a drug state, unable to say anything, and he's kind of stuck in this state now.
But he's the one who
Watching
talks the most during the play.
that, well, once again, that's why I would cut Pyramus this week. I'd
Okay.
have it be like a mime thing of him just sitting in the audience,
Just like dazed of watching
dazed,
this weird play.
like high, just watching this weird play by these rude mechanicals.
Yeah.
But he's trapped.
I could
like
see that in claymation.
The last time there was a film adaptation of Midsummer was 2015 with Julie Taymor.
Yeah, pretty recent. Yeah.
Yeah. But once again, like it's one of those ones where it's like I haven't seen an animated one. I feel like
Yeah.
the story of Midsummer lends itself to being an animated film.
I think animated Shakespeare, I'd like to see more of that. Yeah. That
Yes.
just in general. We've seen enough.
Claymation Titus Andronicus.
If somebody wants to make the entire Shakespeare canon in claymation, that sounds like a really cool lifelong project.
Yep. Take a long ass time.
Yeah.
To do
or
that.
you could do something like the Chimes of Midnight, where you just do like, samples of a whole bunch of Shakespeare plays, but the claymation abridged complete Shakespeare would be fun.
Yeah, but that'd be like my honorable mention is Midsummer in claymation.
That is a mention worthy of the honor, I would say. Good job.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, on that fun note, Ryan, we have talked a lot.
I've been wearing the hat this whole time.
I was about to say it's
the
sunset got dark a while ago here.
Yeah, the sunset a while ago, but this is a quirky episode, and unlike Hamlet, I will keep my hat on.
I love it.
Okay, right. I was hosting this episode, so
yes, you were.
Before we sign off, do you have any kind of grand conclusions about Shakespeare on film from this discussion?
I mean, once again, I love Shakespeare, so anytime we see a new adaptation of something, I'm going to check it out. Whether or not I like it or not is, up to my purview. Like I was all for the Michael Fassbender Mackers until I saw it and fell asleep in the theater 3 times because it
That's
was
too
so
many
slow and
times.
plotting and boring. But I was like, at the trailers were really cool looking. Like, and I was like, great, Braveheart meets Mackers. Bring it on. That sounds like a really cool story. I know, Ryan, you don't like the whole thing of if it's done well once, why do it again? It's like, but I'm just all for it.
It's not so much that if it's
Yeah.
done well once, why do it again? It's what can you do differently
Yes.
is what I want to see.
Yes.
If you're not going to do something radically different,
Yeah.
and we have a really good version we can already watch, then I don't want, like, I was bored to tears 1-2 seasons ago when the most recent time that Stratford did Romeo and Juliet, because it was
Right.
just the most bland, boring pumpkin pants production that seemed like every decision was just, how could we make it that high schoolers can watch this instead of reading the play? Like, that's what it, and I, having read the play in high school and have seen it so many times, like, I was watching it. I think there were a lot of actors in it I liked, and I like them, but they weren't doing enough to lift it off the page. That I'm just like, why am I watching this? Why did you spend so much money making this? Show me something I haven't seen before. And I get that. And I think I said a version of this in the Doubt episode too, that I am burdened by how much I have seen in a lot of these cases, just because, well, there will always be new people who haven't seen it. There's enough old versions that they can see to get caught up if that's all we want to give them. But these are the most famous stories ever told. Show me your weird Grand Theft Hamlet. Show me the weird Viking battle saga that
show us Claymation Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah, and as much as I had problems with Lepage's Mackers, I still thought it was really cool.
Yeah,
just on like the inventiveness of the premise alone.
That's just like how there's the Ethan Hawke modern Hamlet. I do think we are still waiting for the modern Mackers to be done.
And whether or not the specific context he decided might better be suited to a different Shakespeare play like Titus, I think that's a worthwhile discussion to have. And I think, there's things about the material that, like, a more radical rewriting of it could have maybe bridged the gap, whereas he was trying to really make it like, see, look how similar these things are, when they weren't necessarily fitting in that way. But I just keep coming back to this again, especially like in live theater, where you're going to the trouble of reviving it. Put new life into it, bring it back to life. Don't give me a stage version that makes me think I could just be watching the Richard Burton movie or the Branagh movie. And if you're going to make another movie, well, then all the more reason to. Those movies exist. They are sealed in time, and a time that we can return to anytime we want. The rest is silence.
Or in your case with Comedy of Errors, it hasn't been done on film really. So
sure.
So
that's a good example of one that, like, wow, it's really weird that there isn't a movie of this. Sure. And therefore, if you want to do the very faithful Pumpkin Pants version, maybe that's one that you can actually get away with doing. I did enjoy seeing that version of it at the Globe, but it was more about just the experientiality of being the Globe that really sold it for me. Or for a movie, I'd like to see the funny present-day sitcom version. I think would work.
Oh, I could totally see it. I can totally see your pitch on that. Yeah. All right. Fun note, Ryan.
Right. I was hosting this episode. Man.
Yes.
Thank you for joining me for this weird, circuitous conversation. This will be fun to edit.
I was about to say, you're going to have fun editing this one, aren't you?
Where can people find and follow you and listen to you talk about non-Shakespeare things?
Follow me at Mackenzie on all social media platforms. Follow my other theatrical musical antics over on Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, where Ryan is coming back to talk about the frogs at some point.
Oh, am I? Is this decided? Okay.
It has to be foretold, Ryan. Either way, Before the Downbeat musical podcast is what you can listen to. Ryan, where can people follow you?
You don't need to.
If you want them to.
Yeah, you don't need to find and follow me on social media. But you can follow Cup of Hemlock Theatre at COH Theatre on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Cup of Hemlock Theatre on YouTube, where you might be watching this. Cup of Hemlock Theatre podcast and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this. You can hear and read more of my theater thoughts at Next Magazine. I publish a weekly column there. I occasionally write reviews. So, more theater thoughts galore.
I love it.
Okay, well, thank you for making it all the way to the end to whatever this was.
This was a fun discussion, and we're coming back for the Hamnet review proper.
We'll see. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Cheers.
Cheers.